There are mistakes that change your life in ways you could never anticipate. A moment of distraction, a 2-second lapse in concentration, and suddenly, your sanctuary becomes a trap. For me, it was forgetting my key in a toolbox in the hallway during a renovation. That small mistake, that moment of not paying attention while carrying shopping bags, cost me my sense of security, my ability to sleep without fear, and my ability to trust that my locked door means anything. Because now I know that locks only work if you control all the keys, and once you lose control of that, once your key is in the hands of someone with intentions you can't see, your home ceases to be a refuge and becomes a hunting ground. My name is Elwin Blackwell. I'm 28 years old, and I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 6th floor of a 12-story building in Brooklyn, New York. It's an older building, built in the 1970s, which was undergoing massive renovations when all this happened. There was scaffolding covering the exterior facade, construction workers arriving at 7 a.m. every day, the constant sound of drills and hammers echoing through the walls. It was annoying but necessary. The pipes were being replaced, the electrical wiring updated, the hallways repainted. I work as an event coordinator for a hospitality firm, which means irregular hours and a lot of stress. My apartment is my refuge from the chaos, my private space where I can close the door and the world fades away. Or so it was. The day everything changed was a Thursday in September. I had been out all day running a corporate event, arriving home around 8 p.m. exhausted and laden with shopping bags, groceries, a new lamp I had picked up, my laptop, my purse. The 6th floor hallway was filled with construction equipment, toolboxes, drop cloths, ladders leaning against the walls as they renovated the ceiling. I juggled all my things as I searched for my key, finally finding it in the deep pocket of my coat. I opened my door, walked in with all my bags, kicked the door shut behind me, and collapsed on the couch. It wasn't until 2 hours later, when I went to lock up for the night, that I realized. My key wasn't on the hook by the door where I always hung it. I searched my pockets, my bag, the side table where I left things. Nothing. A cold feeling of dread settled in my stomach. I retraced my steps mentally. I'd had it in my hand in the hallway. I'd opened my door. And then, what? Had I left it in the lock? Had I dropped it? I opened my door and looked down the hallway. Empty now. The workers had left hours ago, and there was no key in my lock or on the floor near my door, but there was construction equipment everywhere. Open toolboxes, stacked tarps, trash cans filled with debris. Had I put my key somewhere when I was juggling all my bags? Had I left it in a toolbox without thinking, my brain on autopilot after a long day? I searched every toolbox I could see. I checked trash cans. I looked under tarps. Nothing. My key was gone. Panic began to set in. Without my key, how was I going to lock my door? What if someone had found it? I had my building address engraved on it, a helpful service provided by the building so that if you lost your key, it could be returned. But now I realized how stupid that was. Anyone who found my key would know exactly which door it opened. I called the building manager, a gruff man named Quillen, and explained the situation. He sighed heavily. Locksmiths charge double after 10 p.m. Can you wait until tomorrow? What if someone has my key? Did you see anyone take it? No, but it probably fell somewhere. It'll turn up when the workers clean up tomorrow. In the meantime, you can use your chain lock. No one's going to get in. I wasn't reassured, but what other choice did I have? Emergency locksmiths would cost $300, which I really couldn't afford to spend if my key had just rolled under a tarp and would turn up tomorrow. That night, I locked my door, put the chain on, pushed a chair under the doorknob as an extra block that I had seen in movies. I checked every window twice. I lay down on my bed but couldn't sleep, my brain racing with scenarios of what would happen if someone had my key, if they tried to break in, if eventually exhaustion won out. I fell asleep around midnight, and I woke up at 3:17 a.m. I don't know what woke me up at first, just that instinctive sense that something was wrong. I lay completely still in the dark, my heart already beating faster, my body on full alert before my conscious brain could process why. And then I heard it. A click. The sound of a key turning in a lock, my door opening slowly, so slowly, the soft creak of hinges that needed oil, and then the sound that would make my blood run cold, the jingle of the chain being lifted from its slot, as if someone knew exactly how to remove it without making a sound. The chair under the doorknob, which I thought would be a barrier, moved, gently pushed aside, and my door swung open completely. I was lying in my bed, across my small apartment. I could see directly into the living room, kitchen area. And in the doorway, illuminated by the dim light from the hallway, was a silhouette. A figure, male in build, standing completely still, as if listening, waiting. Pure terror paralyzed me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could barely breathe. Every instinct screamed danger, but my body refused to respond. The figure entered, closed the door behind him, gently, carefully, like someone who didn't want to wake the sleeping residents. And then he began to move around my apartment. I could hear it, soft, deliberate footsteps. Going first to my kitchen, the sound of drawers being opened, silently, methodically, looking for something. And then I smelled something. Cologne, cheap, musky, too strong. A smell that didn't belong in my apartment, in my space. A masculine smell, strange, invasive. The footsteps moved from the kitchen to my living room. I heard sounds of him rummaging through things, my desk, my shelves. What was he looking for? Money, jewelry, or something else? I needed to do something. Call 911, scream, anything. My phone was on my nightstand, 2 feet from where I lay. With trembling hands, I reached out so slowly, trying not to make the slightest sound. My fingers touched my phone. I grabbed it, pulled it under my blankets. The footsteps stopped. Silence. And then, so close, I almost screamed. A voice, soft. Barely a whisper. But definitely in my apartment, near the entrance to my bedroom. I know you're awake. Every cell in my body froze. He knew. Somehow, he knew I was conscious. I can hear your breathing change. His voice was calm, almost friendly, which made it more terrifying. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just checking something. Checking what? What was he checking in my apartment at 3 a.m.? I found my voice, small, shaky, but functional. Get out of here, now, or I'll call the police. A sigh. So close, right outside my bedroom door. Don't make this difficult, Elowen. He knew my name. This stranger, this intruder, knew my name. I've been here before. When you weren't here. Your apartment is nice, clean. I like how it smells, like lavender and coffee. The horror of his words hit me. He had been here before, in my apartment, when I was out, touching my things, smelling my space. Who are you? I managed to shout, my voice breaking with terror. Footsteps, closer, entering my bedroom. I jumped out of bed, grabbing my flashlight from my nightstand, one of those heavy metal ones I kept for emergencies. I turned it to its brightest setting, pointing it directly at the intruder, blinding him. In the harsh light, I saw him clearly for the first time. It was Caspian Reeves, the construction foreman, the guy I had seen every day for weeks, who always greeted me in the hallway, who had once held the elevator door for me. He raised a hand to block the light, squinting. Turn that off. Get out of my apartment. My voice was louder now, fueled by terror turned to anger. Now. His eyes, now that the light wasn't directly in them, looked strange. Glassy. Dilated pupils. Was he drugged? Drunk? I was just checking, he said again, his words slightly slurred. Your key. I found it. I thought you should know you're careless. Leaving keys lying around, anyone could find it. So you decided to break in at 3 in the morning. He smiled. That smile made me feel dirty. I wanted to make sure you were safe, that your door locked properly, that no one else could get in. It was a lie. Obviously a lie. But the way he said it, casually, as if he really believed this was reasonable, made me realize I was dealing with someone whose logic didn't work like a normal person's. "Go away," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "Now. Or I'll scream so loud that every neighbor on this floor will wake up." "You don't need to scream," he said, raising both hands in a placating gesture. "I'm leaving. I just wanted to help." He backed away slowly, his eyes still on me, that strange smile still on his face. "You're very pretty when you're scared. You know that?" Bile rose in my throat. He reached my apartment door and opened it. Just before he left, he turned around. "Thanks for the visit, Elowen. Maybe I'll do it again sometime." And then he was gone, laughing. Actually laughing as he walked down the hall. As soon as my door closed, I ran to it, locked it, put the chain on. Useless now, he had already proven he could remove it. Pushed the chair back under the doorknob. Then I ran to my bathroom, the only room with a deadbolt on the door, locked myself inside, and finally made the call I should have made the moment I woke up. 911. "What is your emergency?" "A man. He broke into my apartment. He just left, but he was here in my bedroom." The words came out rushed, hysterical. The police arrived in 9 minutes. By then, Caspian Reeves had disappeared from the building, but the officers found something when they checked the security cameras in the lobby. He had been coming and going from the building at odd hours for weeks. Not just working, coming in at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m., always when the lobby was empty except for the sleepy night guard who never checked construction workers. And when they got a warrant to search his locker at the construction site, they found more. Keys, dozens of keys, from different apartments in the building. All with addresses engraved on them. All found or copied during renovations. My key had been just one in a collection. The investigation revealed that Caspian Reeves had been entering multiple apartments for months, mostly when the residents were away, stealing small things, cash, jewelry, things that wouldn't be noticed right away. But also, and this made me feel physically sick, visiting. Touching belongings, lying in beds, leaving subtle signs that he had been there. 2 other residents reported experiences similar to mine, waking up with him in their apartments. But they thought they had been dreaming, that their imaginations had created the figure at their doors. They hadn't reported anything because they weren't sure it was real. But it had been real. Horribly, invasively real. Caspian Reeves was arrested 3 days later, found in a cheap motel in Queens. Charges: burglary, trespassing, stalking, possession of stolen property, all those keys, and several others that the prosecutor added. His lawyer tried to argue that he had addiction problems, that drugs had clouded his judgment, that he didn't fully understand what he was doing. But the keys, the organized thefts, the multiple apartments, all of it showed premeditation, planning, intent. He's in prison now, 18 months, with probation afterward. But I moved anyway. I couldn't stay in that apartment. Every night, lying in the dark, I listened for every sound, convinced it was my door opening again. Convinced he had made more copies of the keys that the police hadn't found. Convinced he would come back. And the trauma goes deeper than just that apartment. Now I am obsessively careful with my keys. I count them constantly. I check them 10 times before leaving anywhere. I never let them out of my sight. Never put them anywhere except directly in my pocket or bag. Because I learned the hard way that a moment of carelessness, a second of distraction, can give a stranger complete access to your life. That forgetting your key in a toolbox can turn your refuge into a hunting ground. That locks only work if you control all the keys. My therapist says I have hypervigilance, a symptom of trauma. That my brain is constantly scanning for threats because it was taught that danger can appear in your bedroom at 3 a.m. That someone can be in your most private space while you sleep vulnerable and unconscious. And the scariest part, it was someone I saw regularly, who greeted me, who seemed completely normal. Caspian Reeves wasn't a stranger jumping out of the bushes. He was the construction foreman, someone you were supposed to trust to work in your building. That's the lesson I'll never forget. That danger doesn't always come from obvious strangers. Sometimes it comes from the person holding the elevator door for you, from the worker who smiles and says good morning, from someone with legitimate access to your building who decides that access means they can access your life as well. And that one mistake, a forgotten key, a moment of distraction, can cost you your sense of security, your ability to feel safe in your own bed, your ability to trust that your locked door means anything. Now, 2 years later, I still can't sleep deeply. I still wake up in a panic if I hear any unusual sounds. I still check my locks obsessively before going to bed, because I will never forget that night. The click of my lock being opened, the shadow on my doorstep, the smell of cheap cologne invading my space, the voice whispering, "I know you're awake," and that laugh, that horrible laugh as he walked away, that told me that for him, this had been fun, a game, a form of entertainment. Those sounds live in my memory, and every time I hear keys jingling, even my own, for a second I'm back there, frozen in my bed, with a stranger in my apartment, knowing that the only thing between me and danger had been a key I forgot in a toolbox, a 2-second mistake that almost cost me everything. It's been 2 years since I left that building, but every time I hear a drill in the distance, at a construction site, in a neighbor's apartment, even at the hardware store, my whole body tenses up as if I were still there, in 5A, listening to that sound that literally pierced my sanity. My name is Thessaly Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is not a story about ghosts or demons. I wish it were. I wish I could say it was my imagination or a nightmare. But no. It was real. Every second of panic, every drop of cold sweat, every moment I thought I was going to die. It was all terribly, painfully real. It all started in March 2023, when I was finally able to move out of that filthy basement in Queens that I had shared with 2 roommates for 3 years. I had gotten a promotion at the accounting firm where I worked, and for the first time in my adult life, I could afford to live on my own. The Hartwell Arms building in Brooklyn seemed perfect. Newly built, immaculate white walls, stainless steel appliances, and most importantly, it was within my budget. Barely. Moving day was a rainy Friday. I remember the smell perfectly, that heady mix of fresh paint, new wood, and endless possibilities. My apartment 5A was a studio on the 5th floor with a window overlooking the tree-lined street. It wasn't big, but it was mine, completely mine. The first few days were a dream. I unpacked my boxes, organized my books by color, a silly whim I'd always wanted to do, hung the cream-colored curtains I'd bought at IKEA. I met some neighbors in the hallway, an elderly couple in 4B, a young single mother with a baby in 5C. Everyone was friendly, everyone smiled. No one mentioned the tenant in 5B, the apartment right next to mine, with which I shared a wall. The first night I heard him was a Tuesday. I had finished late at the office and arrived home exhausted around 9. I made myself some chamomile tea, put on my pajamas, and lay down in my brand new bed. I was about to fall asleep when I heard it. Zzz. At first I thought it was some appliance, maybe the refrigerator or the heater, but the sound continued, constant, penetrating. A drill. Someone was using a drill. I looked at the clock at 10:47 p.m. I sat up in bed, frowning. Who uses a drill at this hour? I waited, thinking maybe they were just hanging a picture which would be done in a few minutes, but the sound continued, and continued, and continued. Zzz. Pause. Zzz. Pause. Zzz. It was rhythmic, almost methodical, as if whoever was on the other side knew exactly what they were doing. I pressed the pillow against my head, but the sound pierced through the foam, penetrating my skull. After 20 minutes, I got up and knocked on the wall. "Hey!" I shouted, feeling my voice tremble with a mixture of annoyance and shyness. I was new to the building. I didn't want to be the problematic neighbor. "It's almost 11. Could you stop?" The drill stopped immediately. The sudden silence was almost deafening. I stood there in my cloud print pajamas, my heart beating faster than it should have for something so silly. I waited, holding my breath. Nothing. I crawled back into bed feeling slightly guilty. Maybe it was an emergency. Maybe they had a broken pipe or something. But just as I was starting to relax, I heard it. Laughter. Not loud laughter, but stifled giggles, as if someone was trying to hold them back and couldn't. They were coming from the wall from that apartment 5B. And there was something about that laughter. Something mocking, something that made my skin crawl, that made me shrink under the covers. I fell asleep that night with my pillow over my head, but it was a restless sleep filled with dreams where the buzz of the drill mingled with that stifled laughter. The next night, it started at exactly 11:15 p.m. Zzz. This time, I didn't bother banging on the wall. I grabbed my phone and tried to focus on a podcast, turning up the volume until my ears hurt. But even then, I could feel the vibration through the mattress, that insistent buzzing that seemed to vibrate in my very bones. It stopped at midnight sharp. Thursday night, 11:30 p.m. Zzz. Friday, 11:45 p.m. Zzz. I started to notice the pattern. Every night, 15 minutes later, as if it were playing with me, testing my patience, seeing how much I could take before I broke. And every night, the sound lasted a little longer. These were no longer short bursts. They were prolonged, uninterrupted sessions of that drill that seemed to be drilling a hole straight into my brain. On Saturday, I tried to confront him during the day. I knocked on his door, 5B, 3 times. No one answered, even though I could see light seeping under the door. I could sense that someone was there, on the other side, simply ignoring me. "Excuse me," I said, speaking to the white wooden door. "I'm your neighbor from 5A, about the noise at night. Could we talk?" Silence. I swallowed, feeling my cheeks flush with embarrassment and frustration. I felt ridiculous standing there, talking to a closed door in an empty hallway. I went back to my apartment, locked the door, and leaned against it, breathing heavily. That night started at exactly midnight, but this time it was different. The drill was still there, yes, but now there was something else. Banging, heavy, dull thuds, as if something was being hammered against the wall we shared. My wall. Thud, thud, thud. I sat on my bed, hugging my knees to my chest. The banging was so loud that my books shook on the shelf. A photo frame fell to the floor with a tinkling of glass. And then, between the buzzing of the drill and the banging, I heard something that made my blood run cold. My name. Thessaly. It was just a whisper, almost inaudible under the noise, but I heard it. Someone was whispering my name through the wall. I covered my mouth with my hand, to stifle a scream. How did they know my name? There were no nameplates on the doors. I had never spoken to the tenant in 5B. Had they heard me when I introduced myself to other neighbors? Had they checked my mailbox? The drill stopped. The banging ceased. But now I heard something worse, scraping, as if they were dragging something metal against the wall, slow, deliberate. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed with all the lights on, staring at the white wall as if at any moment it would open up and something would come out of it. When the sun finally began to filter through my window, I felt dizzy with exhaustion, my eyes burning from forcing them to stay open. On Sunday, I called the building manager. Mr. Kowalski was a middle-aged man with a prominent belly and a perpetually bored expression. He took notes as I explained the situation, but I could see in his eyes that he was already labeling me as the problem tenant. "Noise after 10, he muttered, scribbling on his clipboard. "I'll talk to him." "Do you know who lives in 5B?" I asked, trying to sound casual. I've never seen him. Kowalski frowned, consulting his papers. Gideon Thatch. He moved in 6 months ago, pays his rent on time, never any complaints. Gideon Thatch. Now the monster had a name. Could you perhaps give me his phone number, so I can talk to him directly? I can't give out personal information about tenants, Miss Monroe. His tone was final. I returned to my apartment, feeling lonelier than ever. I spent the day cleaning, reorganizing, doing anything to keep my mind occupied. I ordered Chinese food and ate it sitting on the floor, watching silly videos on my phone. Anything to keep my mind off what was coming that night. At 12:15 a.m. it started, but this time it wasn't just the drill. It was drilling. Real, actual drilling. I could see white dust falling from my wall near the baseboard just behind my nightstand. I crawled closer, my heart pounding in my chest, and then I saw it. A hole. A small circular hole in my wall, no bigger than a quarter, but big enough to see through. And there was light on the other side. Light from apartment 5B. I crawled away so fast that I hit my head on the bed frame. Pain exploded in my skull, but I barely felt it through the icy terror flooding me. He had made a hole in my wall. He had drilled straight from his apartment into mine. I grabbed a towel from the bathroom with trembling hands and tacked it over the hole. My fingers were so clumsy with fear that I dropped the tacks twice. When I was done, I sat on the floor, breathing in short, shallow gasps. The drilling continued. Another location now, higher up the wall, near where a mirror hung. I saw white dust begin to fall. Another hole, and then another, and another. By the time the sun came up, I had covered 7 holes with towels, t-shirts, anything I could find. My apartment looked like a madhouse, with fabric hanging from the walls like bandages over wounds. I was curled up in a corner, hugging my knees, dry tears tightening my skin. I called work and said I was sick. I couldn't function. I called Kowalski again, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message, my voice breaking. He's making holes in my wall. Please do something. I waited all morning, but there was no response. Around noon, I gathered the courage to look through one of the holes. Just a quick peek, I told myself, just to see what's on the other side. I pressed my eye to the hole, holding my breath. At first, I couldn't make out anything. It was dark, except for a faint light that seemed to come from another room. Then my eyes adjusted, and what I saw made my stomach churn. The wall on the other side was covered in something. At first, I thought it was wallpaper, but then I focused better. They were photos. Dozens, maybe hundreds of photos, all stuck directly onto the wall, overlapping each other like scales. And they were all of me. Photos of me entering the building, leaving the building, in the basement laundry room, buying coffee at the corner store. Some were from far away, taken with a zoom lens. Others were closer, taken when I wasn't looking. There was one of me sleeping that must have been taken through my window. And writing. Scribbles between the photos in red marker. Thessaly. Mine. Beautiful. Soon. I backed away from the hole so quickly that I tripped over my own leg and fell backward. The air rushed out of my lungs in a choked gasp. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The apartment spun around me. He'd been watching me. Since before I moved in, perhaps. He had photographed me, followed me, built a sick shrine dedicated to me on the other side of my wall. And now he was making holes to what? To look at me more closely. To have better access. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my whole body shaking uncontrollably. When there was nothing left to expel, I sat on the cold tile floor, pressing my cheek against the toilet. I had to leave. I had to get out of there. But when I tried to stand up, my legs wouldn't respond. It was as if my body had shut down, overwhelmed by fear. I stayed there, on the bathroom floor, as the hours passed and daylight slowly faded outside the small bathroom window. When I was finally able to move, it was nighttime. I crawled into the living room, grabbed my phone with numb fingers, and dialed 911. 911. What's your emergency? My neighbor, I whispered, my voice so hoarse I barely recognized it. He has pictures of me. He's drilling holes in my wall. Are you in immediate danger, ma'am? I don't know. I think so. Is he in your apartment right now? No, he's in his, next to mine. There was a pause. Has he entered your apartment without permission? No, but has he threatened you verbally or physically? Not directly, but the photos, the holes. Ma'am, I'm going to send an officer to take your statement, but without a direct threat or forced entry, this may be more of a civil matter than a criminal one. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him he didn't understand that I could feel the danger like a physical weight on my chest. But I just whispered, "Please send someone." The officer arrived 40 minutes later. Officer Ramirez, according to his badge. He was young, probably fresh out of the academy, with an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. I showed him the holes. I told him about the drill, the banging, how I had heard my name. I told him about the photos I'd seen through the hole. He took notes, nodding occasionally. Have you tried talking to the building manager? Yes, but he hasn't responded. I suggest you document everything, take photos, keep a record of dates and times. You can get a restraining order if you think you're being harassed. He paused. As for the holes, that's damage to the landlord's property. The manager should handle it. That's it? My voice came out higher than I intended. He has photos of me sleeping, and I'm just going to take pictures and wait. His expression softened slightly. I understand you're scared, but without evidence of direct threat or violation of the law, my hands are tied. Do you want me to talk to him? I nodded vigorously. I watched through my peephole as Ramirez knocked on the door of 5B. Once, twice, 3 times. No one answered, even though I knew Gideon Thatch was there. I could feel it. Ramirez returned to my door. No answer. Look, I'll put this in my report. If anything else happens, any direct threats, any unwanted contact, call us immediately. In the meantime, consider staying with a friend or family member for a few days. After he left, I slid to the floor, my back against the door. Stay with a friend. As if I had many of those. My best friend Juniper was in Seattle. My family was in Ohio, and I was here, alone, in an apartment that had become a prison. I couldn't stay that night. I packed a bag, booked a cheap hotel room in Manhattan, and took the subway. Every man in the car seemed to be staring at me. Every sound seemed like the buzz of a drill. When I got to the hotel, a grimy place that smelled of disinfectant and despair, I locked myself in the room and slept with all the lights on, a chair against the door. But I couldn't afford to stay in a hotel indefinitely. After 3 nights, my credit card was already groaning under the weight. I had to go back. When I opened the door to my apartment, the smell hit me first. Something sweet and cloying that made me wrinkle my nose. The lights were off. I knew I had left them on, and there was something in the air, an expectant quality, as if the apartment itself had been waiting for my return. I turned on the lights. Everything seemed normal at first. My furniture was where I'd left it, my books still organized by color. But then I saw the wall. The holes I had covered up were uncovered. The towels and t-shirts I had nailed up were on the floor, torn off, and the holes stared back at me like empty eyes. But that wasn't the worst of it. There were more holes, dozens of them. The entire wall looked like smallpox, perforated with holes of different sizes, some as small as coins, others as big as my fist, and through each one I could see dim light on the other side. I approached slowly, my body moving of its own accord rather than by conscious choice. I looked through the largest hole. The room on the other side was empty now. The photos were gone, the walls were bare, but in the center of the room was something that made my blood run cold. A chair, facing directly toward the holes, toward me. And on that chair, clearly visible even in the dim light, were objects laid out carefully. A kitchen knife, duct tape, rubber gloves, and what appeared to be a key. A key that, with growing horror, I realized was probably a copy of mine. I stumbled away from the hole, tripping over my own feet. I had to get out. Now. I grabbed my bag, which I hadn't unpacked yet, and ran toward the door. But I stopped with my hand on the knob. The door to 5B was ajar. I could see it from where I stood, a strip of darkness beyond the frame. And as I watched, the door opened wider, slowly, deliberately. A figure emerged into the dim light of the hallway. Gideon Thatch. He was shorter than I had imagined, maybe 5'7", with narrow shoulders and a receding hairline. He was wearing a gray t-shirt and jeans, and in his right hand he was holding a drill. His face was ordinary. That was the scariest part. He could have been anyone on the subway, at the supermarket. No one you would look at and think, that man is dangerous. But his eyes, God, his eyes. They were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl, and he was smiling. A crooked, unnatural smile, as if his facial muscles had forgotten how to form the expression properly. "Thessaly," he said, and his voice was soft, almost gentle. "I finally see you face to face." I backed away toward my apartment, my fingers fumbling for my phone. "Stay away from me." He took a step forward. "I've been waiting so long. Do you know how long? Since the day I saw you on the building tour. I saw you talking to Kowalski, laughing, and I knew you were special. I'm calling the police." My fingers finally found my phone, but they were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Go ahead." He took another step. "By the time they get here, we'll have had our conversation. Our first real conversation." He raised the drill slightly. "Do you like my work? I worked very hard on those holes, each one perfectly placed so I could see you from every angle." The phone slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor. Terror paralyzed me, my feet nailed to the hallway floor. "Sometimes I watched you sleep," he continued, his voice taking on a dreamy tone. "You look so peaceful when you sleep, Thessaly. Like an angel. I took pictures, of course. Hundreds of pictures. I have them all stored away now, in a safe place. What do you want from me?" The words barely came out, a strangled whisper. "I want you to understand." He took another step, and now he was only a few feet away. I could smell his breath. Stale coffee and something else, something sour. We're meant to be together. I knew it from the moment I saw you. I just needed you to see it too. That's why the holes. So we could be closer. So you could feel my presence as clearly as I feel yours. My body finally reacted. I turned and ran down the hall, my bare feet pounding against the cold linoleum. I heard his laughter behind me. That same muffled laugh I had heard through the wall, and the sound of the drill coming to life. Zzz. I took the stairs, 2 at a time, almost tripping, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Behind me, his footsteps, steady, relentless. I wasn't running. I didn't need to. I knew I had nowhere to go. I reached the main lobby, bathed in harsh fluorescent light, and ran toward the front door. Locked. The building was locked after 9 p.m. I needed the electronic key, which was in my apartment. I turned, pressing my back against the glass door. Gideon emerged from the stairwell, still wearing that crooked smile, the drill hanging casually from his hand. "There's no need to run, Thessaly. This can be nice. We can be nice together." He began walking toward me, slow, savoring my terror. "I've planned so much for us. I have everything ready. You just need to say yes." "Help!" I screamed, pounding on the glass door with both hands. "Someone, help me!" "No one's coming," he said softly. "It's late. They're all asleep, like you should be, in your bed, where I can see you." Then I saw something out of the corner of my eye, the doorman's call panel. If I could get to it, if I could press buttons at random, maybe someone would answer. I lunged for it, but Gideon was quicker than I expected. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin with surprising force. He pulled me toward him, and the smell of his body, stale sweat, and something chemical, made me nauseous. "It's okay," he murmured, almost as if he were comforting a child. It's okay to be afraid. I was scared at first, too. But you don't need to be scared anymore. I'm going to take care of you. Forever. I did the only thing I could think of. I raised my knee with all the strength I could muster, aiming for his groin. Gideon doubled over with a guttural cry, letting go of me. I ran again, this time toward the basement door where the laundry room was. I knew it had an emergency exit that led to the back alley. I ran down the used stairs, my lungs burning, my legs like jelly. Behind me, I heard his voice, no longer soft but furious. You can't escape. You're mine. The basement was dark, lit only by a flickering light bulb that cast dancing shadows. I ran between the washers and dryers, desperately searching for the emergency exit door. There, in the back corner, partially hidden behind a shelf of cleaning supplies. I lunged toward it, my fingers finding the panic bar. I pushed. Nothing. I pushed again, harder, putting all my weight into it. Locked. The damn door was locked from the outside. Thessaly. His voice came from the stairs, sing-song, mocking. Come here, don't be difficult. I saw a small space between two industrial dryers. I squeezed in there, making myself as small as I could, covering my mouth with both hands to silence my ragged breathing. I heard his footsteps on the concrete floor. Pause, pause, pause. He was taking his time, enjoying this. I know you're here, he sang. I can smell you, that cheap perfume you wear. Lavender and vanilla. I've smelled it on the wall, you know, when I press my face against the holes. I squeezed my eyes shut, hot tears streaming down my cheeks. Please, I thought. Please, someone come. Please, someone listen. There you are. I opened my eyes. He was standing directly in front of my hiding place, looking down at me with that hideous smile. The drill in his hand whirred to life. I screamed. That's when the basement lights came on, bright and blinding. A voice shouted, "Police! Drop the weapon!" Gideon turned, confused, the drill still buzzing in his hand. At the top of the stairs were two police officers, guns drawn. "Drop the drill and put your hands on your head. Now." For a moment, I thought he wouldn't. I thought he would do something stupid, drag me out of my hiding place and use me as a hostage. But the drill slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a metallic clang. He slowly raised his hands. One of the officers approached to handcuff him, while the other crouched down next to my hiding place. It was Officer Ramirez, the same young officer who had responded to my call days earlier. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. I shook my head, unable to speak. The lady in 4B called. She heard screaming. He held out his hand to me. "Come. You're safe now." As they handcuffed Gideon and led him out of the building, he looked back over his shoulder at me. His eyes met mine, and though his expression was impassive, his words chilled me to the bone. "This isn't over, Thessaly." The next few days were a blur of police statements, restraining orders, and real estate agents. I moved out of the Hartwell Arms building that same week, before the month was even over. I lost my deposit, but I didn't care. I would have paid double to escape that place. The police investigation uncovered more than I had seen. Gideon had 3 phones full of photos of me. He kept a journal detailing his observations of my daily routine, my meals, my favorite TV shows, even my menstrual cycle, which he had deduced from my shopping patterns. He had a copy of my key that he had made weeks before the holes, but apparently he had been waiting for the right moment to use it. He was charged with stalking, trespassing. He had entered my apartment 3 times while I was at work, and assault. The prosecutor said it was enough to send him to prison for 5 years, maybe 7 with good behavior. Only 5 years. He pleaded guilty as part of a plea bargain. I never had to testify, never had to see him face to face again. But sometimes I wish I had. I wish I had had the chance to look him in the eye in court and let him know that he didn't completely break Thessaly Monroe. Almost. But not completely. I now live in Queens again, in an older building with solid concrete walls. My apartment is on the 2nd floor, And I have my boyfriend. Yes, I have a boyfriend now, a sweet man named Marcus, whom I met on a dating app 2 months after Gideon. Check every corner before I can truly relax when I get home. I've started therapy. My therapist, Dr. Chen, says I have PTSD. I wake up from nightmares where I hear the drill, where I see those eyes staring through holes that multiply until there are no solid walls left, only holes. Some nights I can't sleep unless all the lights are on, just like those first nights in the Hartwell Arms building before everything turned into a nightmare. Marcus is patient. He understands when I freeze at the sound of a drill in the building, when I need to double-check that all the doors are locked, when I obsessively check social media to make sure my accounts are private and no strangers are following me. But what I fear most isn't the nightmares or the sounds of construction. It's the letter. It arrived 3 months ago, sent from Rikers Island State Prison. I recognized the handwriting immediately from the scribbles I had seen through those holes. The envelope was marked with the official prison stamp, which meant it had been examined and approved. I didn't open it for 2 weeks. It sat on my kitchen counter, lurking like an unexploded bomb, while I stared at it and wondered if I had the courage to read whatever Gideon Thatch had to say to me. Finally, with Marcus holding my hand, I opened it. It was just one line, written in that same meticulous, neat handwriting. I'm counting the days until the walls between us disappear again. G. The police told me it wasn't technically a threat, that they couldn't do anything about it other than add it to their file. They told me they would notify me when he was close to being released, that I would have the opportunity to speak at his parole hearing. 5 years, maybe 7. And then what? Will I be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life, jumping at every drill sound, every strange shadow, every unfamiliar person who stares too long? Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel truly safe again. But then I remember something else. I remember running through that basement, fighting even when every instinct screamed to give up. I remember pounding on that glass door, screaming for help even when I thought no one would come. I remember that moment when I raised my knee and fought him off, when I chose to survive no matter the cost. Gideon Thatch wanted to own me. He wanted to reduce me to something he could observe, control, eventually destroy. And he almost succeeded. He almost broke me in those months of terror, when the sound of the drill felt like it was piercing, straight into my soul. But I'm here. I'm still here. And when he finally comes out, when he inevitably tries to find me again, because men like him never really stop, I'll be ready. I'm no longer the frightened woman hiding behind towels nailed over holes. I'm no longer the woman paralyzed in the hallway, too terrified to move. I am Thessaly Monroe. I am a survivor. And this time, if I hear a drill in the night, I won't tremble under the sheets. This time, I'll call the police before he can drill the first hole. This time, I won't wait for him to come through the wall. This time, I will fight. But sometimes, in the stillness of the night, when Marcus is asleep beside me and the apartment is quiet, except for the distant hum of traffic on the street below, I find myself listening for that sound that will never completely fade from my memory, the whir of a drill against a wall. And for a moment, just a moment, I'm back in 5A, watching white dust fall from my wall, knowing that on the other side is someone who believes I am his. Then Marcus stirs beside me, murmuring in his sleep, and the spell is broken. I am here. I am safe. For now. But I'm counting the days too, Gideon. I'm counting the days until you try to come back, and I'll be ready. My goodness, even now, at 31 years old, and living in a small bungalow on the outskirts of Tacoma that I bought with money from a lawsuit I won for work-related stress, the hum of a dryer stops me in my tracks. It's not the innocent purr of spinning drums. It's a mechanical wail, like the last breath of something alive being spun into nothingness. I wake up sweating in my single bed, sheets clinging to my skin as if the basement had followed me here. And for a moment, I swear I smell that metallic stench. Sticky, coppery, like rusty coins dissolved in dirty water. My name is Leora Cressida Quill, Leora to my friends, of whom I no longer have many, and Cressida for official forms, a name my mother, a retired librarian from Spokane with Scottish immigrant roots, chose from a forgotten poem because it sounds like a wind carrying secrets. And in the fall of 2022, when I was 28 and life was overdue rent in a decrepit Capitol Hill building in Seattle, I went down to the laundry basement with a basket of dirty laundry and came back up with the weight of a horror that still crushes my chest. I thought it was just an old building with eccentric neighbors and pipes that groaned like souls in torment. It was a nest of human shadows where isolation was not only geographical, third floor, no elevator, stairs that creaked like old bones, but emotional. A woman alone in a city where it rains incessantly, drowning screams in the constant noise of the metropolis. If you're listening to this on YouTube, with your warm light and your door locked, remember, terror doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it's the cycle of a dryer spinning too slowly, revealing what someone wanted to wash and forget. And in my case, it wasn't a sauce stain. It was blood. Real fresh blood, which made me question every door I opened, every neighbor I greeted with a forced good evening. This is my story, not as a bedtime story, but as a memory that wakes me up screaming, the basement that stole my innocence, detail by detail, spin by spin. It all started with the move, a Friday in September that smelled of wet cardboard and broken promises. I had left my shared apartment in Belltown after an epic fight with my roommate, a barista named Eudora Klein, who accused me of stealing her emotional space because I worked double shifts at a secondhand bookstore in Pike Place Market, selling dusty tomes to tourists who feigned interest in Kerouac while sniffing the market's aroma of smoked salmon. Eudora was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, with constellation tattoos on her arms and a laugh that filled rooms, while I was the quiet one, reading silently under yellow tulle reading lamps, escaping a childhood in Spokane where my father, a mechanic named Thadwick Hale, who drank more than he fixed engines, left my mother and me with debt and a garage full of rusty tools. Seattle seemed like a fresh start. The building on Capitol Hill, a red brick monolith from the 1920s called the Evergreen Arms. Ironic, given that the vines climbing the walls were dead from neglect, with affordable rent for a single person and a shared laundry basement that promised modern amenities in the Craigslist ad. I signed the lease with a shaky smile, ignoring the musty smell that wafted up through the vents during the tour, and moved in with 3 boxes, a fold-out bed, and a stray cat named Bram that I found meowing under the porch. The building was a living fossil, 5 stories without an elevator, dark wooden interior stairs that creaked under the weight of invisible neighbors, and a lobby with cracked tiles that reflected the dim light of a hanging light bulb. My apartment, 3B, was a narrow studio overlooking an alley where feral cats fought at dawn. A tiny kitchen with a stove that hissed gas, a bathroom with yellowed tiles that dripped endlessly, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall covered with faded graffiti, "Live or Die," scrawled in red paint that looked like dried blood. The neighbors were a mosaic of loneliness. In 2A, Eldridge Voss, a 65-year-old retiree with a beard as white as dirty snow and eyes that sparkled with untold stories, always smoking in the lobby with a cigarette that smelled of stale tobacco and regret. In 4C, Jethro Bannister, a 42-year-old programmer with foggy glasses and a nervous laugh that burst out at inopportune moments, like when we passed each other on the stairs, and he muttered, "Traffic on I-5 is hell," as if it were a secret code. And then there was the couple in 1D, Maribel Quist and her silent husband, a guy named Harlan Fisk, who worked night shifts at a warehouse in the harbor, leaving Maribel alone with her collection of romance novels that she stacked on the porch like offerings to an absent lover. They were friendly in their own way. Eldridge lent me a rusty toolbox to fix a leak in the sink. Jethro shared a cold pizza on a stormy night. But the building exuded isolation. Thin walls that filtered whispers but not conversations, and a laundry basement that no one mentioned in informal welcomes, as if it were a shared secret that no one wanted to unearth. The first few weeks were an awkward adjustment, filled with little everyday terrors that I blamed on the stress of moving. Bram the cat would scratch at the curtains at midnight, his yellow eyes glowing in the dark like accusing headlights, and the dripping in the bathroom would synchronize with my racing pulse during sleepless nights when I relived fights with Eudora. "You're a hermit, Leora. Get out of your shell." I worked 9 to 5 at the bookstore, smelling of old paper and spilled coffee, returning to an apartment that felt more like a temporary refuge than a home. The basement laundry room was my weekly ritual. Thursday at midnight, when the building was asleep and the machines were free, I would go down with my wicker basket, dirty clothes piled up like accumulated guilt, jeans stained, with ink from book labels, blouses that smelled of market dampness. The basement was an underground den, concrete stairs spiraling down from the lobby, lit by bare light bulbs that flickered like dying stars, and a cavernous space with 6 washers and dryers lined up against cracked concrete walls, covered in faded graffiti. "JFK lives," scrawled in 1963, now faded like a broken dream. The air was thick, heavy with humidity, and the faint stench of chemical detergent mixed with something deeper, like earth turned over after a storm. The machines hummed like giant insects, drums spinning with a hypnotic rhythm that drowned out the distant traffic on I-5, and the scratched linoleum floor was littered with lost coins and loose buttons, relics of other people's lives. The first time I noticed something strange was in my second week, on a rainy Thursday that pelted the windows with drops like impatient fingers. I went downstairs at 11:45 p.m., basket swinging on my hip, phone flashlight in hand because the basement lights flickered as if they had a life of their own. The place was empty. A relief. Just the echo of my footsteps on the damp cement and the distant drip of a broken pipe that sounded like a clock counting down to midnight. I put my load in washing machine number 3, the one that didn't leak, poured in blue detergent that smelled like fake lemon, and started the cycle with a click that echoed like a muffled gunshot. While I waited, I sat on a splintered wooden bench against the wall, leafing through a Stephen King paperback I had salvaged from the bargain bin. The Shining, ironic now, the yellowish light from the overhead bulb casting long shadows that danced with the hum of the machines. That's when I smelled it. A subtle metallic stench, like hot coins in a sweaty pocket coming from dryer number 4, the one next door. I wrinkled my nose, chalking it up to a forgotten sock or the humidity that permeated everything in Seattle, but the smell lingered, sticky, clinging to my throat as if I had licked iron. I got up, curiosity piqued, and opened the dryer lid with a squeak of rusty hinges. Hot steam escaping like the breath of a sleeping dragon, burning my face with a heat that made me recoil, eyes watering. Inside, nothing alarming. A couple of crumpled white towels, a lone navy blue sock, but at the bottom of the drum, stuck to the lint filter, was a tuft of short, wavy brown hair, like someone who had just cut their hair, and underneath, a reddish stain, not ketchup or sauce, but something darker, more viscous, clinging to the metal as if it refused to go away. My stomach tightened, a cold knot that made me swallow hard. Blood. No, impossible. Shared laundry room. Weird things happen. I slammed the lid shut, stepping back, and sat down again. Book forgotten, ears attuned to the dripping that now sounded like muffled laughter. The cycle ended 40 minutes later, and I climbed the stairs with my damp clothes dripping in the basket, the metallic smell following me like an olfactory ghost, but I dismissed it as newly moved-in paranoia. It's Seattle, I told myself, double-locking the door to 3B, Bram meowing hello from the worn-out sofa. Rain and mold, nothing more. But the basement began to call to me, like a whisper in the Rocky Mountain wind, that my mother swore carried the voices of ancestors. The second week, Thursday again, midnight sharp, my ritual to avoid the cues of neighbors doing laundry at peak hours, like Eldridge with his sauce-stained shirts, or Jethro with his gym towels that smelled of stale sweat. I went down with the heaviest basket. Work jeans hardened by coffee splatters from grumpy customers, blouses stained with dust from old books. The basement air was thicker that night, heavy with ozone from a distant storm rumbling over Puget Sound, and the lights flickered more, casting shadows that stretched like fingers toward my ankles. I stuffed the clothes into washing machine number 3, my unofficial assignment, poured in the detergent with hands that trembled slightly from the cold rising from the concrete, and started the cycle with a hum that vibrated in my teeth. As the water gurgled into the drum, a sound like throat swallowing, I wandered around the space, my phone flashlight sweeping dark corners, stacks of yellowed People magazines on a shelf, a rusty coin cart with slots that accepted nothing but quarters, and on the opposite wall, a 2015 calendar pinned up with thumbtacks, pages torn out through June, as if someone had marked lost time. The metallic smell returned then, stronger, emanating from dryer number 4 again, as if the machine itself exhaled it with each spin. My pulse quickened, a dull drum in my chest drowning out the water. Coincidence? Or something worse? I approached, my footsteps muffled by the scratched linoleum, my hand trembling as it rested on the hot lid, the metal burning my palm, a sharp pain that made me hiss, and I opened it with a bang. Hot steam came out in a cloud that enveloped my face, my eyes watering, my skin reddening as if I had been slapped with humid air. Inside, the same white towel, but now with fresh stains, dark red, splattered in irregular patterns like splashes from a crazy paintbrush, and stuck to the drum, not one, but several strands of hair, brown, curly, with greasy roots suggesting a recent cut, recent as in hours ago, and underneath, a crumpled dishcloth, soaked in something viscous that dripped onto the floor with a slow plick-plock, the red liquid spreading into a tiny puddle that reflected the light from my flashlight like arterial blood. My stomach churned, a vortex of nausea doubling me over, hand over my mouth to stifle the groan. Blood. Real blood. Fresh. The coppery smell hitting me like a punch, metallic and sticky, clinging to my nose as if I had smeared it on. I backed away, the lid slamming shut with a bang that echoed in the empty basement like a gunshot, and leaned against the wall, cold concrete biting into my back through my sweatshirt. My vision clouded by tears of pure panic. What the hell? A neighbor cutting themselves in the kitchen? Or something worse, something that won't wash away with detergent? The hum of my washing machine turned into a roar, the cycle spinning like a racing heart, and I heard, or thought I heard, footsteps on the staircase above, heavy, deliberate, descending with a creak of wood that vibrated in the damp air. Panic pinned me to the spot, an icy chill spreading from my chest to my limbs, my legs trembling as if the concrete had turned to jelly. I crouched behind a row of machines, washers number 1 and 2, their drums still as metal coffins, a forgotten basket at my feet, flashlight turned off so as not to give myself away. Darkness enveloping me like a black shroud splattered with red in my mind. My breath was caught in my throat, a silent gasp that burned my lungs. Each inhalation a risk of being heard, in the silence broken only by the hum of my machine and the distant dripping. The footsteps drew nearer. Thud thud on the concrete staircase, a heavy rhythm like work boots, and then the basement door opening with a squeak of ungreased hinges that made my skin crawl. A figure entered, a tall silhouette, broad shoulders silhouetted against the dim light of the lobby, plastic bag in hand, dripping, plick-plick on the floor, a sound my mind translated into blood splattering. I couldn't see his face. The darkness and my hiding place concealed it, but I could hear his breathing, hoarse, ragged, like someone holding back rage or guilt. He headed straight for dryer number 4, his steps muffled but determined, and opened the lid with a metallic groan that made me clench my teeth to keep from screaming. Steam billowed out again, clouding the air, and he put the bag inside, a crackle of plastic, something heavy falling in, muttering to himself. "Clean it all, damn it. Everything." His voice was deep, a Northwest accent creased by the night, familiar but unplaceable. Eldridge, Harlan, and the metallic smell intensified. A blow that made me cover my nose, bile rising in my throat. The drying cycle started with a roar, the drums spinning hard, vibrating the floor, and he stood there, motionless, as if watching the machine devour his secret. Minutes stretched into hours. My heart was beating so hard I could swear I could hear it over the hum, cold sweat dripping down my back, soaking my sweatshirt. And Bram. No, Bram was upstairs, meowing alone in the apartment. But in my mind, his meow was an echo of my own terror. Finally, footsteps again, thud-thud up the stairs, door closing with a click that echoed like a bolt in my soul. And silence. I stayed there, curled up, counting to 300, 5 eternal minutes, before crawling toward the dryer, lid opening with steam that burned my face again, eyes watering, and the red rag falling at my feet. Clotted blood, strands of hair, stuck to it like macabre trophies. I kicked it under the machine, my laundry ending with a beep that made me jump, and I ran up the stairs, my feet slipping on wet steps. The basket banging on the railing like a drum of panic, the door to 3B closing with a triple lock, my back against the wood shaking like a leaf in a storm. I didn't sleep that night. I curled up on the sofa with Bram on my lap, his purring a false balm against the terror gnawing at me, phone in hand, dialing 911 3 times before hanging up, broken voice whispering blood in the basement only to hear the operator's tone. "Emergency, what's going on?" But what was going on? A stained rag, hair, a neighbor washing. What? A kitchen injury? Or something worse, an assault hidden in the darkness of the building. Isolation crushed me. Alone in 3B, neighbors, above and below but separated by walls that absorbed screams, Seattle raining outside like a veil drowning the world. I called my mother at dawn, my voice hoarse from stifled crying, stammering, "Mom, the building." Something weird. She, with her prairie accent softened by years of libraries, murmured, "Come home, Leora. Cities eat girls like you." But I couldn't. Rent was my chain, work my lifeline. The next day, Friday, I avoided the basement. Dirty clothes piling up in the basket like accumulated guilt, and when Eldridge passed me in the lobby, cigarette dangling from cracked lips, eyes sunken like wells, his "Hey Quill" sounded like a question, his gaze lingering on my basket. "Laundry room full?" he asked, his voice raspy from tobacco. My pulse jumped. Did he know? Was he the figure? I nodded, forcing a smile that hurt. "Yes, I'll wait." I ran upstairs, locks clicking shut, and terror set in. Every creak in the ceiling was footsteps, every drip in the bathroom, an echo from the basement. The following week was a crescendo of paranoia that ate away at me like mold on the walls. I took my clothes to a laundromat on Broadway, the Vapor Wash, a dive with machines that smelled of industrial bleach and graffiti in Spanish promising revenge. But the building called to me, notes on the basement door, machines repaired, used with caution, and neighbors commenting on the stairs. Jethro, his laptop backpack bouncing, muttered, "I heard noises last night like someone dragging something heavy." My stomach sank, the bag leaking. Maribel, passing by with a stack of romance novels, whispered, "Harlan works late, but the basement... Strange, isn't it? Smells." Her nervous laugh made my skin crawl, and in my apartment, Bram meowed more, yellow eyes fixed on the door as if he smelled danger. I tried to normalize. Extra shifts at the bookstore, smelling fresh fish from the market to drown out my thoughts. But sleepless nights, where the imaginary hum of dryers woke me up, cold sweat soaking my pajamas, and I dreamed of red rags spinning, blood splattering the drum like red rain. The following Thursday, I couldn't take it anymore. Basket overflowing, I went down at midnight with a flashlight in my hand and pepper spray in my pocket, bought at a hardware store in Pioneer Square, the clerk laughing, "For city bears." The basement was empty, lights flickering, and the metallic smell lingered, stronger, as if machine number 4 exhaled it with every breath. I put in my load, started the cycle, and waited, sitting on the bench with my book open, but pages unread, ears alert to the staircase. Footsteps came at 12:20, heavy, deliberate, and I hid again, behind the machines. Breath held in a whistle that burned my lungs. The figure entered. Harlan Fisk, silhouette recognizable by his oil-stained work jacket from the port, plastic bag in hand dripping again, plick-plick on the cement. He opened dryer number 4, put something heavy inside, a dull thud that vibrated the floor, and muttered, "It's going. It's all going." The cycle started, a deafening hum, and he stayed, smoking a cigarette that smelled of stale tobacco mixed with metal, ash falling to the floor like red snow in my mind. He came back up a few minutes later, and I waited, then opened the lid. More red rags, fresh blood splattered inside, a white shirt button stuck with coagulation, and a long blonde lock of hair like a woman's. Vomit rose, splattering the floor, and I ran upstairs, door closing, bolts locked, Bram scratching at the door, as if he knew. I called the police that night, shaky voice on 911. Blood in the basement. I think it's a crime. But the officer who arrived, a guy named Torrin Hale with a trimmed mustache and tired eyes, inspected the place with a flashlight. Red stains, yes, but it could be paint or sauce. No formal complaint, no search warrant. His paternal tone infuriated and terrified me. Couldn't they see? Or was I the crazy one? Days of surveillance passed. I went down to the basement at dawn, the machine empty but the smell lingering, and found notes on my door. "Wash me soon," in shaky handwriting, unsigned. The terror escalated. Harlan on the stairs, eyes darting to my basket. "Hi, Quill. Everything clean?" Eldridge, smoking more, ashes in the lobby like clues. Jethro muttering, "I heard banging last night." My life became a vortex. Blurred work at the bookstore, customers like shadows, and barricaded nights. Bram, my only companion, meowing at shadows. The climax came on a Thursday in November, a storm lashing Seattle like revenge. I went downstairs, found the dryer open, a fresh red rag inside, and footsteps upstairs. I hid. Saw Harlan come down with a larger bag, dripping red, muttering, "She won't talk now." I called 911 from my hiding place, whispering, and when he came upstairs, I ran out but tripped, basket falling, dirty clothes scattering. He spun around, eyes fierce. "Quill, what are you doing?" I ran, stairs slippery, door slamming, police raiding that night. Harlan arrested for assaulting his lover, her blood on the machines, hidden in his apartment. The building emptied, but the trauma lingers. Every wash is a red buzz, every shadow a strand of hair. I survived, but the basement scarred me. A woman washing her fears, spin after spin. I can't use elevators, not anymore. I can't even look at them without my chest tightening, without the air becoming thick and heavy in my lungs. I've been living in a 3-story building for 8 months, specifically because it doesn't have an elevator. My friends think it's eccentric. My therapist, Dr. Fenimore, knows the truth. Every time I hear that sound, that soft ding announcing the arrival of an elevator, I am transported back. Back to that metal box suspended between the 11th and 10th floors. Back to the smell of sweat and cheap cologne. Back to those eyes that looked at me as if they already knew me, as if they had a right to know me. My name is Winslow Gray. I'm 31 years old, and exactly 18 months ago, I was trapped in an elevator for 47 minutes with a man who knew things about me that no one should know. 47 minutes that changed my life forever. Let me take you back. It was a Thursday afternoon in April, around 6:30 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had been obsessively watching my watch all day, counting down the minutes until I could leave the office. It had been a hellish week at the advertising agency where I worked as creative director, with a particularly difficult client who rejected all our proposals. I lived on the 12th floor of the Meridian Building in downtown Portland, Oregon. It was one of those modern luxury complexes that had become so popular, all glass and steel, with a gym in the basement and a rooftop terrace. The elevators were new, sleek, with illuminated touch panels and mirrored walls that allowed you to see yourself from every angle. I hated those mirrored walls. That day, I had stopped at Whole Foods on my way home. I needed groceries. My refrigerator was pathetically empty, and I had thought that cooking something decent might brighten up my week. I bought too much, as usual. 4 heavy bags that cut off circulation to my fingers as I waited for the elevator in the building's lobby. The doorman, an older man named Eugene, who always had a friendly smile, helped me with the door. "A lot of shopping today, Miss Gray," he remarked. "I'm going to actually cook this week," I replied, smiling despite my exhaustion. "I promise," he laughed. "That's what they all say." The lobby was relatively quiet. A couple of residents were checking their mail near the mailboxes. A young woman I vaguely recognized from the 8th floor was talking on the phone while waiting for the other elevator. Everything was normal, ordinary, safe. The elevator on the right arrived with that characteristic ding. The steel doors opened with a hydraulic sigh. Empty. I stepped in, juggling my bags as I pressed the button for the 12th floor. The numbers lit up in bright blue. Just as the doors began to close, a hand slipped between them. The doors opened again, and he stepped in. Tall. That was my first impression. Very tall, maybe 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out, his dark jacket, conservatively cut brown hair, angular face with a strong jaw. He could have been handsome if it weren't for something in his eyes, something I couldn't identify at the time, but that made me take an involuntary step back. "Excuse me," he said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I didn't want to lose you." I nodded briefly, turning my attention to my bags, pretending to be busy organizing them. It was standard elevator protocol. Avoid excessive eye contact, maintain personal distance, pretend the other person doesn't really exist. He pressed the button for the 7th floor. The doors closed. The elevator began its smooth descent downward before going up. Wait. Descent. I looked at the panel. We had passed the lobby and were heading toward the underground parking garage. Sometimes the elevator did that, picking up calls from lower floors before going up. "Long day," he said, breaking the awkward silence in the elevator. I replied without looking at him, keeping my eyes fixed on the descending numbers. "Office work is exhausting, isn't it?" I nodded vaguely, uncomfortable. Why was he trying to make conversation? The unwritten rule of the elevator was clear: silence, especially with strangers. We reached the basement. The doors opened. No one was there. The doors closed again. The elevator began to ascend. 1, 2, 3. And then between the 3rd and 4th floors, there was a sound. A sharp metallic squeak, as if something was scraping against something else. The elevator shook violently, throwing me forward. My shopping bags fell, oranges rolling across the mirrored floor. And we stopped. The motor hummed, trying to restart, but the elevator didn't move. The lights flickered once, twice, and then settled into a dimmer glow than before. The numbers on the panel had gone completely dark. My stomach sank. "Shit," I muttered, pressing the alarm button. Nothing. I pressed it again, harder. The button lit up red, but no sound came out. "I think we're stuck," he said, and there was something in his tone, something almost pleased, that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. "The alarm button should work," I said, more to myself than to him. I pressed the emergency phone button. It lit up, and I could hear a dial tone. Ring, ring, ring. No one answered. Come on, I whispered, pressing the button again. Ring, ring, ring. Nothing. "New emergency systems sometimes fail," he said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather and not trapped in a metal box suspended between floors. I had a friend who was stuck in one for hours. How comforting, I muttered, pulling out my phone. No signal. Of course. We were in a steel elevator, probably acting as a Faraday cage. Panic began to bubble up in my chest, that familiar feeling of constriction. I'm mildly claustrophobic. Never so bad that I avoid elevators altogether, but enough to feel uncomfortable in enclosed spaces. And now I was literally trapped in a 6-foot by 6-foot box with a stranger. I'm sure someone will notice the elevator is stuck, he said. The monitoring system should alert maintenance. I forced myself to take a deep breath. He was right. It was a modern building with state-of-the-art technology. They were probably already sending someone. I'm Caspian, by the way, he said, extending his hand. Caspian Lowe, from 7A. I looked at him, then at his hand. After a moment that felt too long, I shook it briefly. His palm was clammy. Winslow, I said, quickly letting go of his hand. Winslow, he repeated, as if savoring the name. It's unusual. I like it. I nodded, turning back to examine the control panel again. There had to be something I could do. I pressed every button, testing to see if any of them worked. Nothing. I don't think that's going to help, Caspian said behind me. I need to do something, I replied, my voice sounding more tense than I intended. The heat was already beginning to build. Modern elevators have ventilation, but with the system shut down, the air was becoming heavy, dense. I could feel beads of sweat forming on my forehead. I took off my jacket, folding it carefully as I tried not to think about how long we might be here, how much air there was in this sealed space. Are you feeling okay? Caspian asked. You look a little pale. I'm fine, I lied. I just don't like small spaces. There was a pause. Yes, I know you're a little claustrophobic. I froze. Slowly, I turned to look at him. What did you say? Your claustrophobia, he repeated, his expression neutral. Didn't you just mention it? No, I said carefully. I said I didn't like small spaces. I didn't say anything about claustrophobia. He blinked, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes, something cold and calculating, before his expression returned to that forced smile. Oh, I guess I just assumed. It's pretty common. But the damage was already done. A silent alarm had started ringing in my head. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I pressed myself against the elevator wall, getting as far away from him as I could in that limited space. My eyes moved over him, really looking at him for the first time. His jacket was expensive but wrinkled, as if he had been wearing it for days. There was a stain on the collar of his shirt, and his hands, God, his hands, were tucked into the pockets of his jeans, but I could see they were shaking slightly. Have you lived here long? He asked as if nothing strange had happened. A year, I replied briefly. 12th floor, right? My blood ran cold. I hadn't told him which floor. He had pressed 7 before I said anything. How do you know that? I saw you press the button, he said simply. Before I got in, I said slowly. You pressed 7 before you saw which floor I pressed. His smile widened, but there was no longer even a pretense of warmth. You have a good memory, Winslow. The way he said my name, intimate, possessive, made my skin crawl. Who are you? The words came out as a whisper. I told you. Caspian Lowe, 7A. There's no 7A in this building, I said, my mind racing. I knew the layout of the 7th floor. My friend Della had lived there briefly. The apartments went from 7B to 7F. There was no 7A. His smile didn't waver. No. Interesting. You must have misremembered. The air was getting hotter. I could feel my shirt sticking to my back, sweat running down my spine. But it wasn't just the heat. It was fear, pure primal fear, bubbling up from somewhere deep in my gut that knew I was in danger. Why did you lie? I asked, hating how my voice trembled. Lie? That's a strong word. He leaned against the opposite wall, crossing his arms. Maybe I just got the apartment number wrong. It happens. And how did you know about my claustrophobia? I told you. I figured it out. No one figures that out, not without reason. There was a long moment of silence. The elevator creaked softly, reminding me that we were suspended in midair, held only by cables that could snap at any moment. I tried not to think about that. "Okay," he finally said. "You want the truth? I've been watching you." The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. "What?" My voice came out barely audible. "For months," he continued, his tone casual, as if he were discussing his favorite sports team. "Since you moved in, actually. I saw you on the first day struggling with all those boxes, your hair pulled back in that messy bun, and I thought you were perfect." My heart was beating so hard, I was sure he could hear it. "You're crazy." "Crazy?" He laughed, but it was an empty, hollow sound. "No, Winslow. Crazy would be to have let this opportunity pass me by. Crazy would be not to have found a way to really get to know you. You don't know me." "Oh, but I do." He took a hand out of his pocket, and I saw he was holding a phone. He unlocked it and showed it to me. There was a photo on the screen. Of me. Me in my apartment, visible through my window, cooking in my kitchen. Me wearing only a t-shirt and underwear, my hair wet from the shower. Nausea rose in my throat. "Did you take that?" "I have hundreds," he said, swiping through the images. Photo after photo after photo. Me buying coffee. Me at the building's gym. Me sleeping. Me changing clothes. "Stop," I whispered. "Stop. I know everything about you, Winslow Gray. You were born on February 14th, 1993, in Seattle. Your mother's name is Saffron. Your father is Theodore, although you haven't spoken to him in 5 years since your parents' divorce. You work for Nielsen Creative Group. You've been there for 4 years. You make $87,000 a year. You have a cat named Ptolemy, but he ran away 6 months ago and you never found him." Each word was like a physical blow. How do you know all that?" "I've been watching you," he repeated, as if it were obvious. "Watching. Learning. You have a predictable routine, which was helpful. Every morning you wake up at 6:45 a.m. You do yoga in your living room for 30 minutes. You make coffee black, no sugar. You read the news on your iPad while you eat, usually cereal, although on weekends you sometimes make pancakes." Tears were starting to form in my eyes. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be real. You leave at exactly 7:50 a.m. to get to work on time. You walk to work on nice days, take the 15 bus when it rains. You work until 6 most days, sometimes later. On Fridays, you go to happy hour with your coworkers, usually Della and Marcus, at that Irish bar on Morrison Street. "Stop," I said again, but my voice was weak. "You order the same thing every time. A Moscow Mule, no cucumber. You don't like cucumber. In fact, there are quite a few things you don't like. You hate cilantro. You call it soap in the shape of a herb. You don't like horror movies. They give you nightmares. And you have that thing where you check that the door is locked 3 times every night before you go to bed. How do you know about the door?" The tears were falling now, hot and fast. His smile widened. "There are many ways to watch someone, Winslow. Cameras, listening, hacking security systems. The Meridian building has excellent security on paper, but digitally, well, everything is vulnerable if you know how to look for it. You hacked the security cameras, and your computer, your phone, your email account. It was easier than you think. People are so careless with their passwords." He tilted his head. "Your password is Ptolemy 2019, by the way. Pretty predictable." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. But I was trapped, literally trapped in this metal box with a man who had been stalking me, violating every aspect of my privacy for months. "Why?" The question came out as a sob. "Why would you do this?" "Because you're special," he said, and there was something almost tender in his voice, which made it even more terrifying. "From the moment I saw you, I knew you were different. That you were mine. I'm not yours. I'm not anyone's but my own. Not anymore. The word hung in the air like a threat. Panic was in full effect now. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My breathing came in short, shallow gasps. The elevator walls seemed to be closing in, the ceiling lowering, the air becoming thinner and thinner. I need to get out. I began pounding on the elevator door with my fists. Help! Someone, help me! No one can hear you, Caspian said calmly. We're between floors. The sound insulation is pretty good. Help, please! I kept pounding, my knuckles tearing against the metal, blood staining the shiny steel. Winslow, calm down. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't touch me, I screamed as he took a step toward me. I pressed myself into the corner, making myself as small as possible. Stay away from me. He raised his hands in a gesture of false peace. It's okay, just breathe. I'm not going to hurt you. You're not going to hurt me. I let out a hysterical laugh. You've been stalking me. You've been violating my privacy, taking photos, hacking into my life. To get to know you better, he interrupted. To understand you, so that when we finally spoke, it could be perfect. Perfect, I repeated, incredulous. This isn't perfect, this is sick. His expression hardened. I didn't expect you to understand immediately. People never understand real love when they see it. This isn't love. This is obsession. What's the difference? He asked, genuinely curious. I closed my eyes, trying to think, to find a way out. I had taken a self-defense class in college. What had I learned? Stay calm. Don't provoke the attacker. Look for opportunities to escape. But how do you escape from a sealed box suspended in the air? I opened my eyes, forcing myself to look at him. I needed to keep him talking, keep him calm until help arrived. Because help would come. It had to come. What do you want from me? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I want you to see me, he said simply. Really see me. Not as a stranger, not as a threat. As someone who loves you more than anyone will ever love you. You don't know me well enough to love me. I know everything about you. You know facts, routines. That's not knowing me. Then teach me, he said, taking another step closer. We have time. We have all the time in the world here. The elevator creaked again, louder this time. The sound sent a shot of adrenaline through my system. How long could we be suspended here before the cables gave way? The elevator, I said. It could fall. It won't. There are multiple safety systems. How do you know that? A flash of something, pride perhaps, crossed his face. I may have done a little research on the elevator systems in this building. I may even have found some vulnerabilities in the control system. The realization hit me like a punch in the stomach. You did this. You made the elevator stop. He didn't deny it. He just smiled. Why? The tears were coming back, hot and bitter. Why would you do this? Because you never noticed me, he said. And for the first time, I heard real emotion in his voice. Anger, pain. I've been in the building for a year. I've been in the same elevator with you dozens of times. I've stood next to you in the lobby, in the laundry room, in the gym, and never, not once did you look at me. You didn't even see me. I didn't know you. Exactly. His voice rose, echoing in the enclosed space. You didn't know me, but I knew you. I knew you so well, and I still meant nothing to you. Not even worth a hello or a smile. Nothing. I'm sorry, I whispered, though I didn't know what I was apologizing for. I'm sorry if I made you feel invisible. Invisible, she repeated bitterly. That's exactly the word. I've been invisible my whole life. At school, at work, with women, always looking, never seen. But with you, it was going to be different. It can be different, I said quickly, seeing an opening. We can get to know each other, properly, go out for coffee, talk. Don't lie to me, he cut in. You would never lie to me if we weren't stuck here. You'd avoid me. Maybe file a complaint. Get a restraining order. You'd kick me out of your life before I ever had a chance. A chance at what? To prove to you that we're meant to be together. The delusion of it, the complete disconnect from reality, was terrifying. This man wasn't just a stalker. He was truly deeply disturbed. The heat in the elevator was almost unbearable now. Sweat ran down my face, soaking my shirt. I felt dizzy, lightheaded, as if I might pass out at any moment. And maybe that would be better. To lose consciousness, not have to be present for whatever he was planning. "I'm thirsty," I said, my voice hoarse. "Is there any water?" Caspian frowned, looking at my shopping bag scattered on the floor. "Did you buy something to drink?" "Juice," I said. "Orange juice, in the blue bag." He bent down to check the bags, turning his back on me for the first time since we had stopped. My mind raced. This was my chance. Maybe the only one I would ever get. I looked at the control panel. The alarm button was still lit red, useless. But what about the emergency access panel on the ceiling? I'd seen in movies that elevators had hatches. I looked up. There, on the ceiling of the elevator, was a square panel with a small handle. Caspian was still searching through the bags, muttering something about rolled oranges. Quietly, slowly, I stretched upward. My fingers barely touched the edge of the panel. I stood on my tiptoes, stretching further, ignoring the burning in my muscles. "There's no..." Caspian began turning around. I grabbed the handle and pulled with all my strength. The panel opened with a metallic click. Cool air, well, relatively cooler air, spilled in from above. But more importantly, I could see light. The light from the elevator shaft, dim but there. "What are you doing?" Caspian's voice was sharp, alarmed. "Getting out," I said, jumping to grab the edge of the opening. My fingernails scraped metal, one of them breaking with a flash of pain, but I didn't care. I had to get out, I had to escape. "You can't get out that way," he shouted, grabbing my leg. "It's dangerous. You could fall." "Let go of me." I kicked wildly, my heel connecting with something. His face, perhaps. I heard a cry of pain and his grip loosened. I pushed myself up, my arms trembling with the effort, half my body now through the opening. I could see the elevator shaft, dark and narrow, cables hanging like exposed tendons. Above me, maybe 10 feet up, was the door to the 4th floor. Below was... I didn't look down. "Winslow, get down, you're going to kill yourself." Hands grabbed my waist, pulling me down. I screamed, kicking harder, my fingers clawing at the edge of the elevator ceiling as he tried to drag me back inside. "No, let me go. Help. Someone." The elevator shook violently, creaking in protest. My stomach dropped as we felt a second of free fall. Just a second, but it was enough to make my heart stop. Before the emergency brakes kicked in, with a screech of metal against metal, Caspian let go of me, falling backward with the impact. I hung from the edge of the hatch, my legs dangling in the elevator, my entire weight supported by my scraped fingers. "Help!" I shouted up toward the 4th floor door, which I could now see clearly. "Someone's in there! Help me!" There was no response. My arms were shaking, about to give way. I couldn't hold on like this. I had to go up or down, and down meant going back into that box with him. I gathered every ounce of strength I had left and thrust my knee upward, hooking it over the edge of the hatch. Pain exploded in my kneecap, but I ignored it, using my knee as leverage to pull myself completely onto the elevator ceiling. I made it out, rolling onto the metal ceiling just as I felt hands grabbing my ankle again. "Come back here," Caspian's voice, no longer calm, no longer controlled. It sounded wild, desperate. I looked down through the hatch and saw his face staring up at me, twisted with rage and something else. Fear, perhaps. Fear of losing me. Of losing whatever he thought we might have. "Leave me alone." I kicked his hand away and he recoiled with a cry. Now I was on the roof of the elevator, in the dark shaft, with cables vibrating around me and the dizzying drop to the basement below. I didn't allow myself to look down. Instead, I looked up at the door on the 4th floor. There was a narrow service staircase welded to the wall of the shaft. If I could reach it, if I could climb... "Winslow," Caspian's voice came from below. "Please, don't leave me. We can work this out." I didn't answer. All my attention was on that ladder, barely a meter away. Too far to reach from where I stood. I would have to jump into a dark elevator shaft, onto the metal roof of a box that could fall at any moment. "Don't think," I whispered to myself. "Just do it." I heard movement below. He was climbing up through the hatch. In seconds, he would be up there with me. I jumped. For one horrible second, I thought I hadn't made it. I thought I was going to fall into that darkness below. But my hands found metal, grabbing a step on the ladder. My body swung violently, my feet kicking the air, but I held on. "No!" Caspian's voice filled with rage and panic. I climbed hand over hand, feet searching for rungs, until I reached the level of the fourth-floor door. There was an emergency lever next to it. I grabbed it and pulled. The door opened with a groan of protest, letting in blessed light from the hallway. I crawled through it, falling onto the hallway carpet like a beached fish, breathing in ragged gasps, my whole body shaking. Behind me, I heard Caspian shouting my name, the sound echoing in the elevator shaft. I didn't look back. I stood up on shaky legs and ran. I ran down the hallway, past numbered apartments, until I found the staircase. I descended those steps faster than I had ever descended anything in my life, my feet barely touching the steps. First, second lobby. I burst into the lobby, wild, bloodied, crying. Eugene the doorman jumped out of his chair. "Miss Gray, what happened?" "The elevator," I gasped. "Trapped. Man. Followed me. Call the police." He was already reaching for his phone. "Stay here. I already called maintenance about the elevator 20 minutes ago when the system alerted me that it was stuck." "He made it stick," I interrupted. "On purpose. He's been stalking me. Call the police. Now." The next 40 minutes were a blur. Police arriving, paramedics checking my scraped hands and bruised knee, giving them statements while shivering under an emergency aluminum blanket. A rescue team pulled Caspian out of the elevator shaft. He was immediately handcuffed. As he passed me, escorted by officers, he looked at me. "I love you," he whispered. "Someday, you'll understand." I shuddered, looking away. Caspian Lowe, which turned out not to be his real name, was charged with multiple counts: harassment, stalking, computer hacking, tampering with building security systems, kidnapping, and more. The investigation revealed that he had been watching me for 14 months, not just a few, as he had claimed. He had hacked not only the building's security cameras, but also my laptop, planting malware that allowed him to activate my webcam remotely. They found over 2,000 photos of me on his computer. Some were from inside my apartment, taken through the window with a telephoto lens. Some from his hacked webcam. He had documents detailing every aspect of my life: my schedule, my habits, my friends, my family, my financial history. He had been building a file, learning everything about me. And this wasn't the first time he had done this. There were 2 previous cases in other cities. Other women he had stalked, watched, terrorized. In one case, he had managed to break into a woman's apartment and had lived in her attic for 3 days without her knowing. This information came out during the trial, which I did not attend. I couldn't see him again. I couldn't hear his voice. My lawyer presented my written statement. He pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 16 years in prison. 16 years. It seems like a lot until you do the math. With good behavior, he could be out in 10. In 10 years, I'll be 41. And he'll be free. The thought keeps me awake at night. I moved out of the Meridian building 3 days after the incident. I couldn't bear to be there, looking at that elevator, knowing that the cameras he had hacked were still there, that the walls held memories of his surveillance. I found a new place on the west side of Portland. 3rd floor, no elevator. I changed my phone number. I got a new email address. I practically rebuilt my digital identity from scratch, working with a cybersecurity specialist to ensure he couldn't track me down again. I quit my job at Nielsen Creative, not officially because of what happened, but everyone knew. The pitying looks, the whispers when I walked into a room. I couldn't handle it. Now I work from home as a freelance consultant. It's safer this way. Less public exposure, fewer opportunities for someone to watch me, follow me, become obsessed with me. I've been in therapy for 18 months. Dr. Fenimore is kind, patient, and doesn't push when some days I just can't talk about it. PTSD, she says. Post-traumatic stress disorder, as if putting a name to it makes it any less terrifying. I have rituals now. I check that all the windows have the curtains closed before dark. I cover my laptop's webcam with tape, even when it's turned off. I change all my passwords weekly. I check the login history of all my online accounts daily, looking for signs of unusual activity. And I avoid elevators. Completely. Last week, I had an interview for an important consulting contract in a 23-story office building. The meeting was on the 19th floor. I stood in the lobby for 20 minutes, staring at the elevators, watching other people casually walk in, press buttons, ride up without a second thought. I tried. God, I tried. I took 3 steps toward the middle elevator, my finger hovering over the call button. And then I heard it. That soft ding. The doors opened, and for a split second, just a split second, I saw his face. Caspian smile, his eyes, his hand reaching out to me. I ran. I left the building, back out onto the street, breathing in panicked gasps as people watched me pass. I called and canceled the interview. I told them I had a family emergency. Maybe I did. Marcus, my former colleague who became one of my best friends, says I'm getting better, that just trying to get into the elevator is progress. Della agrees. They tell me that trauma takes time to heal, that I can't expect to be fine just because he's in prison. But here's the thing I don't tell them, that I don't even tell Dr. Fenimore. Sometimes I still feel like he's watching me. I know it's irrational. I know he's locked up, that he doesn't have access to computers or phones, that he can't reach me. But when I'm alone in my apartment at night, when the shadows lengthen and the building creaks, I could swear I can feel eyes on me. As if he had installed cameras that the police never found. As if he had an accomplice we never met. As if somehow he was still there, watching, waiting. 2 weeks ago, I received a letter. The letter itself was innocuous, advertising for a cable company. But on the back, someone had written in pen, "I still think about you every day. C." I called the police. They said they would investigate, but without a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. They confirmed that he was still in prison, that he hadn't sent anything from his cell. But someone sent that letter. Someone who knows where I live. Now I carry pepper spray in my bag. I took a self-defense class, then another, then signed up for regular classes. Marcus helped me install new high-security locks on my door, the kind that can't be picked. I bought a home security system with cameras that only I can access. Nothing cloud-based, nothing that can be hacked remotely. I've become the thing I swore I'd never be, paranoid, scared, constantly looking over my shoulder. But maybe that's what it takes to survive. Maybe that's what it means to live with the knowledge that someone once reduced you to data, to patterns, to an obsession. Maybe some elevators, both literal and metaphorical, once you get on, you never really get off. I can't receive packages, not from Amazon, not registered mail, not even a letter that needs a signature. The mere thought of opening my mailbox gives me cold sweats and nausea. My hands start to shake. My therapist says it's a conditioned response to trauma. My sister says I need to get over it. Neither of them was there. Neither of them saw what I saw. Neither of them felt that hand around their throat, squeezing, cutting off the air, while a desperate voice whispered, I'm sorry, but I can't let you go." My name is Reverie Cho. I'm 29 years old. I work as a graphic designer for a small agency in Chicago, And 11 months ago, I almost died because of a mistake made by the Postal Service. A simple, stupid, deadly mistake. It was a Tuesday in June, one of those perfect summer days when the sky is an impossible blue and there's a gentle breeze that makes everything feel like a promise. I had finished work early, a miracle in itself, and stopped at my favorite coffee shop to buy a cold brew before heading home. I lived in the Ashland Towers building in Wicker Park, a mid-rise residential complex that had been recently renovated. It was the kind of place that advertised itself as modern urban living with luxury amenities, which really meant it had new washing machines in the basement and a mailbox system with digital access codes. I entered the lobby around 4 in the afternoon, nodding to Mrs. Kowalski from 2B who was picking up her mail. The lobby was all faux marble and mirrors, designed to look more expensive than it actually was. My mailbox was 3A. I scanned my access code on the digital panel. The new system had been installed just a month earlier, and the little door clicked open with a satisfying click. Inside was the usual: bills, junk mail, a home decor magazine I didn't remember subscribing to, and a package. It was small, about the size of a child's shoebox, wrapped in plain brown paper. It didn't weigh much when I picked it up, maybe a pound. There was a shipping label stuck to the top, but the ink was smudged, as if it had gotten wet. I could barely make out a 3 and something that might be a C. 3C. I frowned. That sometimes happened with the new mailbox system. The scanner didn't always read the codes correctly, especially if the label was damaged. Clearly, this was for my neighbor in 3C. I had never met the person who lived in 3C. Our schedules never coincided, I guess. I had seen the name on the mailbox once, Larkin Voss, an unusual name that had made me think of a character from a Gothic novel. I took the package, thinking I would just leave it at his door when I went upstairs. A neighborly favor, something good for universal karma. If only I'd known. If only I had known. I went upstairs. He lived on the 3rd floor, just one flight above, and walked down the hall to my apartment. The door to 3C was closed, as always. Silent. I thought about leaving the package right there, but something stopped me. What if someone stole it? Wicker Park was generally safe, but you never knew. I decided to open it quickly, just to see if there was anything valuable inside. If it was important, I would ring the doorbell at 3C. If it was Amazon junk, I would leave it at his door. I went into my apartment, dropped my keys in the bowl by the entryway, and sat down on my couch with the package on my lap. My cat, Calliope, jumped up next to me, sniffing the box curiously. "It's from the neighbor, Callie," I said, scratching behind her ears. "We're just going to take a quick look." The brown paper was sealed with ordinary tape. I tore it off easily, revealing a plain white box underneath, the kind clothing stores use for gift wrapping. There was nothing written on the box. No brand name, no logo, no additional label. I lifted the lid, and my world stopped. For several seconds, my brain couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. It was as if the information was coming in disconnected fragments that refused to form a coherent picture. Ice. There was ice in the box, melting into puddles of cold water that had soaked what appeared to be white tissue paper, and in the middle of the ice, wrapped in clear plastic, a finger. A human finger, cut cleanly at the base, the skin pale with a grayish tint, the nail still bearing traces of dark red polish. A gold wedding band hung loosely around the base, too large for the finger, now separated from the hand that had held it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I could only stare at that impossible object, that thing that shouldn't exist in my living room, in my orderly, predictable world. Calliope meowed softly, rubbing against my arm. The sound broke the spell. I threw the box as if it were burning, falling backward off the sofa. The box hit the floor, ice spilling onto my beige carpet, the finger rolling partially out of its plastic wrapping. I threw up. I didn't have time to make it to the bathroom. I doubled over and vomited directly onto the floor, cold brew and lunch coming up in waves as my body rebelled against what I had just witnessed. When I finally stopped retching, I wiped my mouth with the back of my trembling hand and crawled backward, away from the box, the finger, the horror spilled across my carpet. I had to call the police. That was what you did when you found human body parts, right? God, why wasn't my mind working? Why couldn't I think clearly? I fumbled for my phone in my pocket, my fingers clumsy and numb. I pulled it out, unlocked the screen, dialed 9, and then I saw the note. It had fallen out of the box when I threw it away, a small piece of folded paper that had landed near the finger. With trembling hands, I picked it up and unfolded it. The letters were written in red ink, or maybe blood. I didn't want to think about which. To the one who owes me, this is only the beginning. Pay up or the next one will be whole. You have until Friday. The paper fell from my fingers. This wasn't for me. It was for Larkin Voss, for the neighbor in 3C whom I had never met, and someone dangerous, someone capable of cutting off fingers and mailing them, thought I was that person, or would soon be. I had to return this. I had to get rid of this. I had to... A knock on my door made me jump so violently that I almost dropped my phone. 3 loud, urgent knocks. "Hey, 3A, open up!" It was a male voice, rough, almost frantic. I froze, pressing myself against the wall furthest from the door. "I know you have my package." The voice rose, bordering on hysteria. "The mailbox scanned it wrong. I need that back." Larkin Voss. It had to be him. More knocks, louder now, making the door rattle in its frame. "Please, you don't understand. If I don't have it, they'll think that..." The voice cut off abruptly. I heard quick footsteps receding down the hall, then the sound of a door opening and closing. Silence. My heart was beating so hard I was sure someone could hear it through the walls. I stood pressed against the wall, trying to decide what to do. Call the police. That was obvious. But what would I tell them? That I had opened someone else's mail and found a finger? That my neighbor wanted it back? That there was a threatening note about debts? This was organized crime. It had to be. Gambling, drugs, something like that. And I had just gotten caught in the middle because of a stupid mistake in the mailbox system. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. Okay. Think, Reverie, think. I could take the package to the police, leave it at their door and run out of the building, go straight to the nearest police station. Let them handle this. Let them deal with severed fingers and threatening notes and neighbors involved with what were clearly dangerous criminals. Yes, that was a plan. I forced myself to move, cautiously approaching the overturned box. The finger was partially visible, the gold wedding band glinting in the light of my living room lamp. My stomach lurched again, but I swallowed the bile and looked for something to pick it up with. Paper towels. I needed paper towels and gloves. I rushed to the kitchen, grabbed a roll of paper towels and a pair of latex gloves I used to dye my hair. My hands were shaking so much that it took me 3 tries to get the gloves on correctly. I went back to the living room, knelt down next to the mess on my carpet, and carefully, so carefully, began to pick up the melted ice, the soggy tissue paper, and finally, using several layers of paper towels, the finger itself. I didn't look at it directly. I couldn't. If I did, I was going to throw up again. I wrapped it in the paper towels, placed it back in the box, and closed the lid tightly. My hands left wet marks on the white cardboard. Okay, now I had to get out of here. I had to... My door exploded inward. No, it didn't explode. It opened, because I had forgotten to lock it when I came in. A simple, stupid, almost fatal oversight. Larkin Voss burst into my apartment like a wild animal, his frantic eyes scanning the room until they landed on the white box in my hands. "That's mine," he yelled, lunging at me. I didn't have time to react, to scream, to run. 1 second I was standing with the box, the next I was on the floor, the air knocked out of my lungs, his weight pressing me into the carpet. The box flew from my hands, sliding across the hardwood floor. "Gimme that." His voice was sharp, desperate. Hands grabbed my shoulders, pulling me up, then pushing me back against the nearest wall. My head hit the plaster with a sickening sound. Stars exploded in my vision. "Please," I gasped. "Just take it. I don't want to." "You can't have seen it." His hands found my throat, fingers curling around my neck. "You can't tell anyone. They'll kill me. Do you understand? They'll kill me." The pressure increased. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. Panic exploded in my chest like fireworks, every cell in my body screaming for oxygen. I scratched at his hands, trying to loosen his grip, but his fingers were like steel. My vision began to narrow, darkening at the edges. I was going to die. Here, in my own apartment, because of a package that wasn't even mine. No. No. With the last spark of conscious strength I had left, I lifted my knee with all the force I could muster straight into his groin. It connected. Larkin screamed, his grip instantly loosening. He staggered backward, doubling over. I coughed, gasping for air, my throat burning. I didn't have time. I had to get out. Now. I lunged for the door, but he was quicker than I expected. Recovering, he grabbed my arm, his nails digging into my skin. "No," he roared, pulling me back. "You can't leave. You can't tell anyone." He dragged me back into the apartment. I kicked, screamed, fought with every ounce of strength I had, but he was bigger, heavier, fueled by a frenzied desperation that gave him almost superhuman strength. He pushed me to the floor next to the sofa. My chin hit the edge of the coffee table, pain exploding in my jaw. I tasted blood. "I'm sorry," he said, and now there were tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, but I can't let you go. I can't let you call the police. I need time to work this out, to pay what I owe to..." I crawled backward, my hand groping blindly for something, anything I could use as a weapon. My fingers found something solid, cold, metallic. A floor lamp. I grabbed it, ripped it from its socket and swung it with all my strength. The metal base connected with the side of his head with a horrible thudding sound. Larkin staggered backward, blood spurting from a wound above his temple. His eyes glazed over. I didn't wait to see if he recovered. I ran out of my apartment into the hallway. "Help!" I shouted, my voice hoarse and raspy from the damage to my throat. "Someone call the police!" The doors remained closed. It was 4:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Everyone was at work. Everyone except me and the man who had just tried to strangle me. I ran toward the stairs, my bare feet slipping on the linoleum floor. Behind me, I heard Larkin come out of my apartment, cursing. "Come back," he shouted. "Please, just let me explain." I didn't look back. I took the stairs, 2 at a time, grabbing the railing to keep my balance. Second floor, first floor, lobby. I bumped into someone as I exited the stairwell. Eugene Kowalski, Mrs. Kowalski's husband, grabbed my shoulders to steady me. "Miss Cho, what happened? You're bleeding." "Call the police," I gasped, clinging to him. "Third floor, 3C, he tried... Who tried what?" Mrs. Kowalski appeared behind her husband, her eyes widening at the sight of me. "My God, your neck." "Reverie," Larkin's voice came from the stairs. "Please, just listen." Mr. Kowalski instinctively moved in front of me, his body blocking access. He was an older man, perhaps 70, but there was something fierce about his posture. "You stay there," he ordered, his voice firm. "My wife is calling the police right now." Larkin appeared at the top of the stairs, and I cringed at his appearance. Blood ran down the side of his face from where I had hit him with the lamp. His eyes were wild, desperate, like those of a cornered animal. "You don't understand," he said, but his voice had lost that frantic edge. Now he just sounded defeated, broken. "I owe them money. A lot of money. To some very bad people. That package was a warning. If I don't pay by Friday, they're going to kill me. And now they all know I live here. They're going to come." "The police are on their way," Mrs. Kowalski interrupted, holding up her phone. "They'll be here in 5 minutes." Larkin collapsed, sliding down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. He buried his face in his hands. "It's over. It's all over." We stood in tense silence, waiting. I was shaking violently, the delayed shock finally hitting me. Mrs. Kowalski found a blanket somewhere and wrapped it around my shoulders. "You're safe now, dear," she murmured. "You're safe." But I didn't feel safe. Not even close. The sirens arrived exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds later. I know because I counted every second, staring at Larkin Voss as he stared at the floor, occasionally sobbing. 3 police officers entered, hands on their guns as they took in the scene. Me, covered in blood and bruises, Larkin bleeding from his head, the Kowalskis forming a protective barrier between us. What followed was a whirlwind of questions, statements, paramedics checking my wounds. I explained about the package, the finger, the note, how Larkin had broken in, how he had tried to strangle me. "It's still up there," I said to one of the officers. "In my apartment, the box, with the finger." The officer, whose badge read Ramirez, nodded gravely. "We're going to need you to come to the station to give a formal statement, and we'll need access to your apartment to retrieve the evidence." Larkin was being handcuffed, still muttering apologies, explanations, pleas. The officers didn't seem particularly sympathetic. "I have gambling debts," he said. "An illegal betting syndicate. I owe $50,000. I promised I'd pay, but I lost my job. I couldn't. They sent that as a warning. It belongs to someone else who didn't pay either. They wanted me to know they meant business." "And you decided to attack your neighbor because," Ramirez asked dryly. "He panicked," I whispered, surprised to find myself weakly defending him. "He thought she was going to call the police, that it would expose him to those people. He thought they would kill him." "He almost killed you," the officer pointed out. I had no answer for that. I spent 3 hours at the police station giving my statement. Every detail from the moment I opened my mailbox to the moment the officers arrived. They had to pause twice because I started shaking so violently that I couldn't speak. A detective named Solis explained what they knew. Larkin Voss had been gambling compulsively for 2 years. He had racked up massive debts with an organized crime syndicate that operated in several states. The finger, they confirmed, belonged to a woman named Diana Prescott, who also owed money. She was alive in a hospital in Milwaukee, terrified but recovering. The package had been delivered by a private courier who had no idea of its contents. He had left it in the building's mailboxes where the faulty scanning system had assigned it to my mailbox instead of Larkin's. A simple technological error that had almost cost me my life. Larkin Voss will face multiple charges, Solis explained. Burglary, assault, attempted kidnapping, attempted murder. He's cooperating fully, giving us information about the syndicate. Hopefully we'll be able to dismantle their entire operation. "What about me?" I asked, my voice still hoarse. Am I safe? Are they going to come after me?" "The syndicate has no reason to target you," she assured me. "You don't owe them anything. You don't know anything that could harm them. And with Voss's information, we hope to arrest them all within the week." I should have felt comforted. I didn't. I didn't return to my apartment for 2 weeks. I stayed with my sister Solstice at her place in Evanston. She let me sleep on her couch, didn't ask too many questions, just hugged me when nightmares woke me up screaming in the middle of the night. The nightmares were always the same. Hands around my throat, squeezing, cutting off the air. Opening a box and finding not a finger, but a whole hand, or an arm, or a head. The contents changed, but the horror was constant. When I finally returned to my apartment, with Solstice accompanying me, insisting on staying while I packed, I found that the building manager had cleaned the place. The vomit-stained carpet had been replaced. The bloodstains had been scrubbed from the walls. The lamp I had used as a weapon was gone, replaced with a new one. It was as if nothing had happened, except for the purple-yellow marks that still encircled my neck like a grotesque necklace, except for the cut on my chin that required 3 stitches, except for the way my hand trembled every time I reached for my keychain. I moved out 3 weeks later. I couldn't stay in that apartment, in that building, knowing what had happened there. Knowing that every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, my whole body would tense up, expecting my door to blow open. I found a new place in Logan Square, first floor, so I wouldn't have to use elevators or stairwells where someone could be waiting, with a 24-hour doorman and visible security cameras, and most importantly, no digital mail system. Traditional mail delivered directly to the doorman, who puts it in physical mailboxes that can't be scanned. 11 months have passed. Larkin Voss pleaded guilty to all charges. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The gambling syndicate was dismantled, its leaders facing decades in federal prison. Diana Prescott, the woman whose finger was sent as a warning, held a press conference talking about her ordeal. I saw her on the news, her bandaged hand resting in her lap, and I had to turn off the TV before I started vomiting. My therapist, Dr. Quillen, says I have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. He prescribed me medication for anxiety, taught me grounding techniques for when panic attacks hit me. He tells me I'm getting better, that my progress is good, but I don't feel better. I can't receive packages. I have everything delivered to Solstice's office, and she brings it to me after opening it first, after confirming that there's nothing inside except what should be there. Books, clothes, art supplies, never body parts. I can't open my mailbox without my hand shaking. I wear gloves now, even for simple letters, as if the paper itself could be contaminated with something horrible. And I can't feel completely safe. Ever. My name is Azalea Drummond, and I will never live in a building with thin walls again. Never. I don't care if it's the only apartment available in the entire city. I don't care if they offer me 6 months free rent. Thin walls make you an unwilling witness to things you should never have heard. Things that change your life. Things that almost kill you. It was 7 months ago. March. Boston was coming out of winter, that time of year when the snow melts into gray puddles and everything smells like dampness and new beginnings. I had just moved into apartment 4B in an old building in Jamaica Plain. 4 stories, no elevator, pipes that groaned like souls in torment, but cheap. And that's what mattered, because I had just quit my job at a tech startup that collapsed spectacularly, and I needed to stretch my savings. The apartment was small, a studio with a one-wall kitchen and a bathroom that barely fit a toilet. But it was mine. Freshly painted white walls, wooden floors that creaked with every step, a window overlooking a narrow alley. It wasn't much, but after sleeping on my friend Nafili's couch for 2 months, it felt like a palace. Moving was easy because I didn't have much. 2 suitcases of clothes, my laptop, a box of books, and a futon that Nefili had given me. That was it. 27 years of my life packed into a borrowed Honda Civic. The first day was perfect. I unpacked, organized my clothes in the small closet, set up the futon against the wall I shared with apartment 4A. I hung curtains on the window. I ordered pizza. I sat on the floor, eating straight from the box, feeling like a real adult for the first time in months. The neighbors seemed quiet. I hadn't heard anything from 4A. No music, no television, no footsteps. Perfect. After the chaos of living with Nefili and her 3 noisy roommates, silence was a luxury. I went to bed early that first night, exhausted from carrying boxes up 4 flights of stairs. The futon was uncomfortable, and I needed to get used to it, but I was so tired that it didn't matter. I fell asleep in minutes, and I woke up at midnight. At first, I didn't know what had woken me up. The apartment was dark, with only the streetlight filtering faintly through the curtains. I lay still listening, trying to identify what had interrupted my sleep. Then I heard it. Voices. They were coming from the wall next to my head, from apartment 4A. 2 voices speaking in low, urgent tones. A man and a woman. I couldn't make out the words at first, just the murmur of conversation. I rolled onto my side, pressing my ear against the cold wall, curious in spite of myself. The walls must have been paper thin. I could literally hear every word as if they were in the room with me. "I can't go on like this," said the woman, her voice trembling. "I can't take it anymore." I know. The man's voice was soft, almost tender. "That's why we have to do it. Tonight." A chill ran down my spine. Something in his tone made me nervous. "Are you sure?" the woman asked. "Are you absolutely sure there's no other way?" "There's no other way. We've tried everything. We can't wait any longer." Silence. Then more quietly, "How?" "The cable," the man replied. "It'll be quick, I promise." My heart began to beat faster. Cable? What cable? What if something goes wrong? The woman's voice was barely a whisper now. "Nothing will go wrong. I've planned everything. No one will know it was us." I sat up on the futon, fully awake now, my skin prickling. This couldn't be what it sounded like. I couldn't be listening to two people planning what? A murder? No. That was ridiculous. It had to be something else. A conversation about a sick pet, maybe. Or a plant. People talked about putting plants to sleep, right? Although, no, that didn't make sense. And why would they do it at midnight? I heard the sound of drawers opening and closing, footsteps crossing the apartment. Then the man's voice again. "I've got it. Ready?" A sob, unmistakable. The woman was crying. Hey, the man murmured. "Don't cry, it's for the best. You know it. After tonight, we'll be free." I know, it's just... God, I never thought we'd come to this. Me neither, but here we are. More footsteps, the sound of a door opening and closing, then silence. I sat in the dark, my heart pounding in my chest. What the hell had I just heard? I had to call the police, right? But what would I tell them? That I had overheard my neighbors having a vague conversation that might possibly have been about planning to hurt someone. I would sound crazy. Maybe I was misinterpreting it. Maybe it was completely innocent, and my tired mind was making connections that weren't there. I lay back down, pulling the sheet up to my chin, but I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing those words in my head. I'll do it tonight, with the cable. No one will know it was us. At 1 a.m, I was still awake, staring at the ceiling. At 2, I got up and walked to the bathroom, drinking water straight from the tap. At 3, I was finally starting to fall asleep when I heard something that made my blood run cold. A thud. Heavy. Like something big falling to the floor. Then nothing. I sat up suddenly, pressing my ear against the wall. Complete silence. Should I knock on the wall? Ask if everything was okay? Before I could decide, I heard footsteps. Quick. Urgent. Then voices again, but this time whispering so softly I couldn't make out the words. Without really thinking, I got up and knocked on the wall with my fist. 3 firm knocks. "Hey," I called. "Is everything okay in there?" The whispering stopped immediately. Silence. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Hello?" I tried again, my voice sounding shaky now. "Do you need help?" More silence, then footsteps, approaching the wall, stopping just on the other side. Someone was standing exactly where I was, with only thin plaster between us. "We're fine," said a male voice. Calm. Too calm. "Thanks for asking." "Okay," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I just heard a loud noise. I dropped something. Sorry if I woke you up." "No problem, just wanted to make sure." "Very kind of you." I moved away from the wall, my skin crawling. Something about that conversation felt completely wrong. The calmness in his voice, the way he had paused before responding, as if he were calculating exactly what to say. I crawled back into the futon, but sleep was no longer an option. I lay there, stiff, listening to every little sound on the other side of the wall. For the next hour, I heard occasional movement. Soft footsteps, the rustle of what could have been plastic, the sound of running water, and then, around 4:30 in the morning, I heard the door to apartment 4A open and close. Footsteps in the hallway going down the stairs. I jumped up, running to my door. I opened it a crack, peering into the dark hallway. I could see the backs of two figures walking down the stairs. A tall man in a dark jacket and a shorter woman with her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Between them, they were carrying something large wrapped in what appeared to be a tarp or a sheet. Something the size of a human body. I closed the door quietly, my hand shaking on the knob. This was real. This was really real. They had killed someone. They had just carried a body out of the apartment next to mine. And I had heard everything. And they knew I had heard something. They knew I had been awake, that I had knocked on the wall, that I had asked if they were okay. Oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. I ran to my purse, frantically searching for my phone. My fingers were shaking so badly that I dropped it twice before finally unlocking it. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? I think my neighbors just killed someone, I whispered, pressing the phone to my ear as I stared at the door, as if they might come through it at any moment. I heard them planning it, and then there was a loud noise, and now they just carried something out. Something that looked like a body. Where are you, ma'am? I gave her the address, my voice breaking. The operator kept me on the line, asking me questions I could barely answer. Had I seen blood? No. Had I seen a weapon? No. Had I seen a victim? No. I'd only heard, through thin walls, in the middle of the night. Officers are on their way, she assured me. Are you in a safe place? I'm in my apartment, next to yours. Are they in your apartment right now? No, they just left. I saw them go downstairs with the thing. Okay, keep your door locked. Don't go outside. Officers will be there in about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That sounded like an eternity. I hung up and checked the lock on my door. The chain was on. The deadbolt was engaged, but the door was old, the wood thin, if someone really wanted to get in. I didn't finish that thought. I sat on the futon, hugging my knees to my chest, staring at the door. Every creak in the building made me jump. Every sound of traffic outside sounded like footsteps in the hallway. 5 minutes stretched to 10, then 15. Where were the police? Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps on the stairs, coming up. Voices whispered but urgent. They were getting closer. 4th floor. My floor. They stopped in front of my door. She's awake, said the man's voice. I heard her talking. Do you think she called someone? The woman sounded terrified. I don't know, but we can't take any chances. The doorknob turned. Someone was trying to open it. Get away, I shouted, my voice coming out high-pitched and terrified. I called the police. They're on their way. The attempts on the doorknob stopped. Shit, the man muttered. Shit, shit, shit. We have to go, the woman urged, now, before they get here. She heard everything, she knows. It doesn't matter. If we stay, we're done for. There was a moment of horrible silence. Then, okay. But if we talk to her first, no. The woman's voice rose. Don't make this worse than it already is. Please, just let's go. More silence. Then the sound of footsteps retreating, going down the stairs. But I couldn't trust that they were really gone. They could be waiting in the hallway, quiet, waiting for me to open the door. I looked around the apartment frantically, searching for something, anything I could use as a weapon. My eyes landed on the kitchen knife I had used to cut pizza the night before. I grabbed it, holding it in front of me with trembling hands. Then I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. Sirens. I ran to the window and looked down at the alley. Red and blue lights filled the street. 2 patrol cars had arrived, officers getting out of the vehicles. I opened my window, leaning out. Up here, I shouted. 4th floor. They went downstairs just a minute ago. The officers looked up, then ran toward the building. I closed the window, still clutching the knife, still not daring to open my door. I heard shouting from below, police commands, more footsteps, these heavier, running up and down the stairs. Then someone knocked on my door. Miss Drummond, Boston Police. Can you open the door, please? I ran to the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood in the hallway, flashing their badges. With trembling fingers, I removed the chain and unlocked the door. The door swung open, and I nearly collapsed with relief. "Are you hurt?" asked one of the officers. A woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. No, I'm fine. Just scared." "Did you catch them?" "We detained them in the lobby." "Now tell me exactly what you heard." I spent the next 3 hours giving my statement. I told them everything. The conversation about the cable, the thud, the figures carrying something wrapped up, how they tried to open my door. More officers arrived. Detectives, crime scene investigators entered apartment 4A with their kits, photographs, tape. The hallway became a circus of official activity. The detective in charge, a man named Sable with tired eyes and a graying beard, sat with me on my futon as he took my statement. "Did you see the body?" he asked. "Not exactly. Just the shape, wrapped in cloth." He nodded, writing. "And the suspects? Had you seen them before?" "No. I just moved in yesterday. I didn't even know I had neighbors." "Can you describe them?" I did my best. The man was tall, maybe 6'5", slim build, dark jacket. The woman was shorter, maybe 5'6", brown hair in a fishtail ponytail, jeans and a sweatshirt. Sable showed me photos on his phone. "Is this them?" I recognized them immediately. I nodded. "Ryland Cortez and Meadow Bishop," he said. "Engaged couple, living together for 2 years." "And they killed someone?" Sable hesitated. "That's what we're trying to determine." "What do you mean?" "I heard them, and I saw something." "I know, and we're taking your report very seriously, but..." He paused. "We didn't find a body in the apartment. There's no blood. There are no signs of a struggle. The place is clean." "What?" "But I heard... We have a team searching the building and the surrounding area. If there is a victim, we will find her. In the meantime, would you be willing to come back to the station to give a formal statement?" I nodded, still confused. How could they not have found anything? At the police station, the confusion only got worse. Ryland Cortez and Meadow Bishop were in separate interrogation rooms. Through a one-way glass window, I watched as detectives questioned them. Meadow was crying, her face buried in her hands. Ryland looked stoic, his jaw clenched, answering questions in monosyllables. "We didn't kill anyone," Meadow insisted between sobs. "I swear to God, we didn't kill anyone." "Then what did you take out of the apartment at 4 in the morning?" the detective asked. "A rug. It was just a rug." "A rug?" "Yes. A Persian rug that Ryland had inherited from his grandmother. We were taking it to an appraiser. He had an early appointment. At 4 in the morning. The appointment was at 6 in Cambridge. We wanted to get there early, find parking. Anyone who lives in Boston knows that parking in Cambridge is a nightmare." The detective didn't look convinced. "And the conversation your neighbor overheard about doing it tonight with the cable?" Meadow blushed deeply. We were talking about disconnecting my ex from my life, blocking him on social media, changing my numbers, all the loose ends. He's been harassing me for months. Ryland was saying that tonight we were going to cut the cord metaphorically, finally free me from that situation. I looked at Sable, who was standing next to me. "Is that true?" "We're verifying," she said. "We have officers checking his devices, his social media, looking for evidence of harassment." "And the rug?" "In his car. It is indeed a Persian rug. Old, potentially valuable. We found the appraiser's contact in Ryland's phone. The appointment is legitimate." I felt sick. "So there was no murder?" "It doesn't appear there was." Sable looked at me with pity. "It seems you misinterpreted a private conversation. But it sounded so..." "I know, and you're not in trouble. You did the right thing by calling. It's better to be safe." She paused. "But we can't hold them. No body, no evidence of a crime. They're going to be released." "They're going to be released?" I repeated, my voice rising. "After they tried to break into my apartment?" after they said I knew too much. That was a misunderstanding on their part too. They thought you were, well, that you were someone sent by Meadows' ex. They were paranoid, scared. They weren't going to hurt you. They just wanted to explain the situation. To my eyes, it looked like a threat. I completely understand, and I can talk to them about that if you want, but legally, there's no basis for arresting them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that it had been real, that the terror I had felt was completely justified. But looking at the tears on Meadows' face, seeing the rolled-up carpet in the back of her car in the evidence photos, I knew Sable was right. There was no murder, just a paranoid woman in a new apartment with thin walls, hearing snippets of conversation and constructing a narrative of horror in her tired mind. They released me around 8 in the morning. Nefele came to pick me up, her eyes wide with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked, hugging me tightly in the station parking lot. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just embarrassed." "You shouldn't be. You thought someone was in danger. You did the right thing. Maybe. But it didn't feel that way." Back at my apartment, everything looked different in the daylight. Smaller, more pathetic. The walls that had carried that ominous conversation now just looked thin and poorly insulated. Rylan and Meadow came home around noon. I heard them come up the stairs, heard their door open and close. Then an hour later, someone knocked on my door. My heart leapt into my throat. I looked through the peephole. It was Meadow. Alone, empty-handed, looking exhausted and sad. I opened the door with the chain on. "Hi," she said softly. I wanted to apologize for scaring you, for everything last night." "You don't need to apologize." "Yes, I do. Rylan and we've been under a lot of stress. The harassment has been awful. My ex he's a problem. And last night was the last straw. We were so focused on finally freeing ourselves from that situation that we didn't think about how it might sound to someone else." She paused. "Especially through thin walls. I misunderstood. That's all. I know, and I don't blame you. If I had heard what you heard, I probably would have thought the same thing." She smiled weakly. "I'm not a murderer, I promise. I'm just a woman trying to escape a toxic relationship." I wanted to believe her, and looking at her now, without the filter of nighttime panic, I could see she was just a normal person. Tired, scared of her own stalker, not a threat. "I'm sorry for causing trouble," I said. "Don't be. You did the right thing. If someone really was in danger, you would have saved a life." She backed away. "I'm going to go. I just wanted you to know, you have nothing to worry about. Rylan and I are just regular neighbors with complicated lives." I closed the door after she left, removing the chain this time. But that night, when I lay down on the futon, I couldn't help but press my ear against the wall, listening, always listening, because thin walls make you a witness. And once you've heard something, even if you misinterpreted it, even if it was completely innocent, you can never stop listening. 3 weeks later, I moved out. I couldn't stand being in that apartment. Couldn't stand being on the other side of that wall. Now I live in a different building, with concrete walls, thick, silent. But still, sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up, and I listen. I press my ear against the wall and try to catch snippets of conversations that aren't there, hoping to hear something terrible. Terrified that this time, it might be real. My name is Saffron Blackwood, and the smell of death changes you. It marks you in a way no other sense can. You can close your eyes to something horrible. You can cover your ears, but you can't stop breathing. And when every breath brings the sweet metallic stench of rotting flesh, when that smell sticks to your throat like tar, when you taste it in every meal for weeks, you change. 4 months ago, I chose apartment 7G in the Meridian Tower because it was perfect. Literally perfect. The building had just opened in downtown Seattle, 35 stories of gleaming glass and steel, advertised as the pinnacle of modern urban living. The views from the 7th floor were spectacular. Puget Sound on one side, the city skyline on the other. And the silence. God, the silence. The real estate agents kept talking about the state-of-the-art soundproofing. Double walls, triple-paned windows, construction designed so you would never hear your neighbors. After 5 years of living in a ramshackle building where you could hear every argument, every toilet flush, every footstep silence sounded like paradise. I signed the lease on the spot. 32 years old, finally earning a decent salary as a software architect, finally able to afford something nice. The apartment was a large studio with an open kitchen, marble bathroom, and that huge walk-in closet that the agent said was surprisingly spacious for a new building. The first 2 days were perfect. I unpacked my boxes, arranged my furniture, hung curtains. The apartment smelled of fresh paint and new wood, that characteristic scent of recent construction. Clean, promising. On the 3rd day, the smell changed. At first, it was subtle. A kind of strange sweetness mixed with something metallic, like coins left in syrup. I thought maybe it was something I had cooked, some residue on the new stove. I cleaned the entire kitchen with disinfectant. The smell lingered. By the evening of the 3rd day, it was stronger. I could no longer convince myself that it was my imagination. Something was definitely wrong. The smell seemed to emanate from the kitchen area, specifically from the extractor fan above the stove. I turned on the extractor fan, thinking that maybe it would help disperse whatever it was. Instead, the smell exploded, filling the apartment with a nauseating wave. I turned off the extractor immediately, rushing to open the windows. But the windows were those modern triple-paneled windows that only opened a narrow crack for security reasons. The fresh air coming in was minimal, doing little against the stench that now permeated every inch of the space. I couldn't sleep that night. The smell was worse in the dark somehow. As if without visual stimuli, my brain amplified every other sense. I lay in bed, one hand pressed over my nose and mouth, trying to filter out the stench. But I could taste it, at the back of my throat. Sweet, rotten, metallic, like copper and decaying flesh. At 3 a.m, I threw up in the bathroom. The smell, combined with the lack of sleep and growing panic, was too much. I sat on the cold tile floor, shaking, wondering what the hell was going on. The next morning, I called the building manager, a woman named Vesper Chen, with a professionally cheerful tone that set my nerves on edge. "New building, Miss Blackwood," she said in that sing-song voice. "Sometimes there are residual odors from construction, glues, sealants, that sort of thing. It should dissipate in a few days." "It doesn't smell like glue," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "It smells like something organic, something rotten." "Well, I'll send maintenance to take a look. Would tomorrow be okay?" "Today would be better. We're fully booked today. Tomorrow afternoon is the earliest I can do." I hung up, frustrated. I spent the day in a coffee shop working remotely on my laptop, doing anything to avoid being in that apartment. But eventually, I had to go back. It was my home. I had paid a deposit, first month, last month. I couldn't just abandon it because of a bad smell. That night was worse, much worse. The stench had intensified, concentrating especially near the kitchen. But now I could also detect it near the built-in closet, which was next to the kitchen wall. The closet where I had hung all my clothes, where I kept my shoes, my suitcase, my belongings. I opened the closet door, and the smell hit me like a physical wall. I recoiled, gagging, my eyes watering. Something was wrong. Something was seriously, horribly wrong. Using the flashlight on my phone, I inspected the closet more closely. The space was deep, about 8 feet, with a hanging rod and a top shelf. The floor was carpeted with the same beige carpet that covered the rest of the apartment. Except in the back corner, the carpet looked wet. I knelt down, holding my breath as best I could, and touched the dark spot. My fingers encountered something slimy, something that definitely shouldn't be there. I backed away, frantically wiping my fingers on my jeans. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Maintenance arrived the next day, a middle-aged man named Dutch with a tool belt and a bored expression that suggested he had seen it all. I showed him the extractor, showed him the closet, showed him the damp spot. He frowned, sniffed the air, and his expression changed. The boredom disappeared, replaced by something resembling concern. "Yeah, that's not normal," he said, kneeling in the closet. He pulled a moisture meter from his belt and pressed it against the damp area. The numbers on the display shot up. "You've got a leak," he announced. "Probably from a pipe or drain. I'm going to have to open this up to see what's going on." Would a leak cause that smell? He hesitated. "It depends on what's leaking, and how long it's been leaking." He returned an hour later with tools. He lifted the carpet in the corner of the closet, revealing a plywood subfloor underneath. And there, in the corner, was a dark stain that extended far beyond what the carpet had shown. "Shit," he muttered. "This is worse than I thought." He took out a screwdriver and began loosening the screws that secured the plywood panel. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws came out. He lifted the panel, and the smell exploded. There are no adequate words to describe that smell. Imagine every rotten thing you've ever smelled in your life. Garbage left out in the sun for days, old meat, sour milk, the metallic smell of blood. Now multiply that by 100 and concentrate it in an enclosed space. Dutch recoiled, retching. He dropped the panel and ran to the bathroom. I heard the sound of vomit splashing into the toilet. I stood frozen, staring at the hole I had created. From inside, I could see something glistening in the light of my phone's flashlight. Liquid. Dark. Viscous. And in that liquid, floating like algae in a pond, was something stringy. Something that looked like hair. Tufts of human hair, tangled and sticky with whatever was decomposing beneath my floor. Dutch came out of the bathroom, his face pale. "Call the police," he said, his voice shaky. "Now." "What? Why?" "Just do it. I'm no expert, but that..." He pointed to the hole. "That's not a plumbing leak." I called 911 with trembling hands. The operator asked questions I could barely answer. My address. The nature of the emergency. Was I in immediate danger? I think there's something dead in my apartment," I whispered. "Under the floor." 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. Officers Martinez and Wolf, according to their badges. Young, professional, with that carefully neutral expression I suppose they teach you in the academy. I showed them the closet. I showed them the hole. The smell spoke for itself. Martinez knelt down next to the hole, took out a flashlight more powerful than mine, and shone it down. "Do you see anything?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Just a moment," he murmured. He leaned closer, almost with his head inside the hole, then he pulled away abruptly. "We need to call the detectives," he said to Wolf, "and the forensic unit." "Why?" My voice came out too high-pitched. "What did you see?" Martinez looked at me, and there was something in his eyes, pity perhaps, or concern, that made my stomach sink. "Miss Blackwood, I need you to leave the apartment. Now, this is a crime scene." The words didn't register at first. Crime scene. Crime. What crime? It was just a bad smell, a leak, something dead in the walls. "Is there a body down there?" The words came out before I could stop them. Martinez didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was answer enough. The next few hours were a whirlwind. More police arrived. Detectives. Forensic personnel in white suits and masks. They cordoned off my apartment with yellow tape. They took me out into the hallway, then into the lobby, then sat me down in one of the fancy leather chairs near the reception desk, while curious residents passed by, staring, whispering. Vesper Chen, the building manager, was there. Her professional cheerfulness completely evaporated. She looked sick, her skin the color of paper. "This is impossible," she kept murmuring. "This is a new building. We check everything. We inspect everything. How could..." A detective approached. Detective Solis, The same last name as the officer in one of my previous stories, I realized foolishly, my brain clinging to irrelevant details because the reality was too much to process. "Miss Blackwood, I need to ask you some questions." He led me to a conference room on the first floor of the building, an elegant room with glass walls and a long table. I sat down, shivering despite the heat in the building. "When did you first notice the smell?" he asked, pulling out a notebook. "Day 3, after I moved in. And before that?" "Nothing. It smelled normal, like paint and new construction." "Did you see anything unusual? Anyone coming in or out of the apartment?" "No. I'm the first tenant. The building just opened last month." He nodded, writing. "Have you ever heard about the worker?" My heart stopped. "What worker?" "During construction, about 8 months ago, a construction worker disappeared from the site. Phoenix Armitage. 24 years old. They came to work one morning and never came home." "Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God." "Do you think it's him?" My voice sounded distant, as if someone else were speaking. "Down there?" "I can't confirm anything yet. We need to wait for forensic identification, but..." He paused. "The building was under construction when they disappeared. 7th floor specifically. This floor." The room spun. I grabbed the edge of the table, trying to anchor myself. "How?" I could barely form the words. "How does someone end up sealed in a building?" "That's the mystery we're trying to solve." For the next 6 hours, I remained in that conference room while the investigation continued upstairs. Vesper brought coffee I couldn't drink. Other people from the building were interviewed. Construction personnel, the developer, the general contractor. Finally, around 9 o'clock that night, Solis returned. "We found human remains," he said bluntly. "Significantly decomposed. They've been there for months, possibly since the construction phase. We're going to need dental work and DNA for official identification, but the profile matches Phoenix Armitage." "What happened to him?" I whispered. "We're still determining that. But there is evidence of blunt trauma to the skull. We're treating this as a homicide." Homicide. Someone had killed Phoenix Armitage and hidden her body in the bowels of this building. She had been there for 8 months, slowly decomposing, while the building was being finished around her, while apartments were being furnished and sold, while I signed a lease and unpacked my boxes, unaware that I was sleeping feet away from a corpse. "I can't go back there," I said. I can't live there." "You don't have to," Solis said. "The apartment is going to be cordoned off for weeks, possibly months, as part of the investigation. And frankly, Miss Blackwood, I would recommend that you break your lease. This building..." He shook his head. "There are going to be lawsuits, investigations. It's going to be in the news for months." It was already in the news. By the next morning, every station in Seattle was running the story. Body found in new luxury skyscraper. Worker's disappearance solved in horrific discovery. Tenant discovers human remains in new apartment. My name was kept out of the initial reports, thank God, but reporters camped outside the building, cameras rolling, interviewing anyone who came out. I stayed in a hotel that night. And the next. And the next. The investigation unfolded slowly, painfully. DNA identification confirmed that the remains were those of Phoenix Armitage. The autopsy revealed blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with being struck with a heavy object, likely a construction tool. Detectives interviewed every worker who had been on site during that period. They reviewed records, schedules, material manifests, and finally, after 3 weeks, they made an arrest. Carver Maddox, construction foreman, 52 years old, with a history of assault and domestic violence. Apparently, he had had multiple altercations with Phoenix over safety issues on the site. Phoenix had threatened to report OSHA violations. And one night during overtime, when they were alone on the 7th floor, the details came out at the trial. How Carver had beaten Phoenix with a pipe wrench. How he had panicked when he realized what he had done. How he had dragged the body into the utility space that would eventually become my walk-in closet. how he had sealed the body beneath the subfloor, pouring curing accelerator to make the installation concrete set faster, covering his tracks. The building had continued construction. No one noticed the smell because the site already reeked of construction chemicals. By the time the building was finished, the body was so deeply sealed, so covered in layers of building materials, that it was undetectable. Until I started living there. Until my body heat, my constant presence, accelerated the decomposition. Until the fluids found a way through small cracks in the seal. Until the smell began to seep through. I broke my lease. The developer didn't fight it. How could he? The scandal was devastating. Other tenants left. Apartment sales stopped. There were lawsuits from Phoenix's family, lawsuits from tenants, regulatory investigations. The Meridian Tower, which was to be the pinnacle of modern urban living, became the building where a man died and was forgotten, sealed into the walls like construction debris. I moved across town. An old building built in the 1950s with creaky wooden floors and groaning pipes and no pretense of being modern or perfect. But it's clean. It doesn't smell like death, except that sometimes, when I'm lying in bed at night, I still smell it. That metallic sweetness. That organic rot. As if it had stuck to my olfactory memory, a sensory ghost that will never completely disappear. I've been in therapy for 3 months. Dr. Lilac Moon, yes, that's really her name, is kind and patient and tells me that trauma takes time to process, that what I experienced was deeply disturbing, that it's okay not to be okay. But here's what I don't tell her. It's not just the memory that haunts me. It's the knowledge. The knowledge that there are buildings all over this city, all over the country, where construction was rushed, where workers cut corners, where safety violations were covered up, where accidents or crimes could have occurred that were never reported. How many other Phoenix Armitages are there? Sealed in walls, buried under foundations, hidden in the spaces we never see. I walk past new buildings now and wonder. I wonder what else is hidden behind those gleaming walls. What secrets are buried beneath those immaculate floors? And every time I smell something strange, a hint of sweetness where it shouldn't be, a metallic tinge in the air, my whole body tenses. My throat closes. I'm back in that closet, staring at that dark hole, seeing that lock of hair floating in decomposing fluid. Carver Maddox was sentenced to 25 years to life. Phoenix's family received a multi-million-dollar settlement. The developer of Meridian Tower filed for bankruptcy. And I moved. I got therapy. I tried to get on with my life, but the smell remains. Not physically. Medically, logically, I know there's nothing actually in my nostrils. It's memory. It's trauma. It's my brain replaying something horrible over and over. Last night, I was cooking pasta, steam rising from the pot. And for a second, just a second, I caught something in that steam. Something sweet. Something metallic. I turned off the stove. I threw out the food. I ran out into the street, gasping for fresh air, telling myself it wasn't real, that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But my hands are still shaking as I write this, because I know the truth that no one else wants to admit. We live in layers of secrets. Our cities are built on what we want to forget. And sometimes, no matter how much we seal it off, no matter how much we cover it up, no matter how many layers of fresh paint and shiny promises we apply, the smell finds a way to seep through. Death finds a way to be known. And some things, once you smell them, never stop haunting you. My name is Embry Castellano, and I am 30 years old. I never considered myself a particularly fearful person. I had lived alone since I was 23, in apartments in not-so-nice neighborhoods with locks that barely worked. I never cared, until the Ashford Heights building, until apartment 3B, until that first night when I heard the click. That was 6 months ago, February in Denver, when the cold cuts to the bone and the sky stays gray for days. I had just lost my job as an editor at a magazine that closed, And my previous apartment had raised the rent beyond what I could afford with my severance pay. I needed something cheap, fast. Ashford Heights was new. Well, newly renovated. A 4-story brick building that had been a warehouse in the 1950s, converted into modern apartments with that industrial style that's so trendy. Polished concrete floors, exposed pipes painted black, bright white walls. The landlord, a man named Garrick Thorne with too much gel in his hair and a used car salesman's smile, showed me 3B with a fake enthusiasm that should have warned me. Freshly painted, he said, gesturing toward the walls. We just installed new appliances. It's a bargain for this area. It was a bargain. $500 less than any other comparable place was charging. That should have made me suspicious. But I had 2 weeks before my current apartment expired and a dwindling emergency fund. I signed the lease that same day. Moving was easy because I didn't have much. 2 suitcases, my laptop, a box of books, an old futon. I carried everything up the stairs to the 3rd floor, sweating despite the cold, my shoes echoing in the empty hallways. Apartment 3B was a long, narrow studio, with the kitchen at one end and a built-in bed at the other. One entire wall faced the hallway, the other faced apartment 3A. The walls were thick, or at least they seemed thick, that industrial concrete that's supposed to insulate sound. That first afternoon, as I unpacked, I noticed something strange. I hadn't heard a sound from apartment 3A. Nothing. No footsteps, no music, no television. It was like living next to an empty space. Perfect, I thought. After years of noisy neighbors, the silence would be a relief. I went to bed early that first night, exhausted from the move. The futon was uncomfortable against the hard concrete floor, but I was too tired to care. I fell asleep almost immediately, and I woke up at 1 in the morning. At first, I didn't know what had woken me up. The apartment was dark, only the streetlight filtering faintly through the single window. I lay still, listening, my body on alert without knowing why. Then I heard it. Click, pause, click, pause, click. It was coming from the wall I shared with 3A. A metallic sharp sound like someone turning a doorknob. Turning it down, releasing it, letting it spring back into place, over and over again. Click, click, click. I sat on the futon, hugging the sheet, to my chest. The sound was rhythmic, constant, almost hypnotic in its repetition. I tried to convince myself it was something mechanical. A pipe, the heater, something old buildings do, but it sounded exactly like a doorknob being tested. The sound continued for 5 minutes. 10, 15. Always the same rhythm. Click, pause, click, pause. As if someone were standing on the other side of that wall, turning the handle on their own door over and over without actually opening it. Why would anyone do that? Finally, after 20 minutes, the sound stopped. I waited, holding my breath, but it didn't come back. The apartment was completely silent again. Too silent somehow, as if the silence itself was listening. I lay down again, pulling the sheet up to my chin, but I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing that click in my head, playing over and over again. The next morning, I convinced myself that I had imagined it. I was exhausted from moving, stressed about my job situation. My mind was playing tricks on me, that was all. I spent the day setting up my workspace, sending out resumes, trying to establish some kind of routine. The apartment felt fine during the day, bright, clean, safe. But when night fell, that feeling changed. I got ready for bed around 11, brushing my teeth in the small bathroom, changing into my pajamas. I checked the door lock, a new strong lock with a security latch. Everything was secure. I lay down, closed my eyes, waited for sleep, and at 1 in the morning, it started. Click, click, click. This time I was awake when it started. There was no doubt. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. Someone on the other side of that wall was turning a doorknob, testing it over and over again. I got up, pressing my ear against the cold wall. The sound was louder here, clearer. Definitely a doorknob. Definitely metallic. Definitely intentional. "Hello?" I called softly, feeling ridiculous. "Is everything okay in there?" The sound stopped immediately. Complete silence. My heart was beating so loudly that I was sure whoever was on the other side could hear it through the wall. "Excuse me," I tried again, my voice louder now. "Do you need help?" Nothing. I waited a full 5 minutes, pressed against that wall, barely breathing. The silence continued. Finally, I walked away and crawled back into the futon, but I kept my eyes open, staring at that wall as if it might open at any moment. The sound didn't return that night, but the next night it did. 1 in the morning. Exactly, like clockwork. Click, click, click. This time I didn't call out. I didn't ask if they were okay. I just stayed on the futon, stiff, listening to that methodical, endless sound. After half an hour, it changed. The clicks became faster, more urgent, and then I heard something else, scratches. Soft at first, almost imperceptible under the clicks of the doorknob, but growing louder, like nails against wood, or against the wall itself. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Combined with the click of the doorknob, it sounded like someone trying to get into somewhere, testing the knob, scratching around the frame, looking for weaknesses. I got up from the futon and ran to the light switch. The apartment was flooded with bright light, making my eyes hurt. But the light felt like protection. Monsters don't come in the light, right? Except this wasn't a monster. It was a person. A real person on the other side of that wall. A person who had been doing this for 3 nights in a row at exactly 1 o'clock in the morning. The scratching continued. Louder now. More insistent. "Hey!" I yelled at the wall. "Stop that! You're scaring me!" The sound stopped. But this time, instead of silence, I heard something worse. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, approaching the wall, stopping just on the other side of where I was standing. Someone was there. Right there. With only concrete and plaster between us. "Who are you?" My voice came out shaky. "What do you want?" There was no answer, but I could feel it. I could feel someone listening on the other side. Waiting. I backed away slowly, my eyes fixed on the wall, until my back hit the apartment door. I grabbed the knob on my own door, making sure it was locked. It was. Deadbolt in place, chain in place. The footsteps on the other side moved away. I heard a door open, the door to 3A, and then close. I ran to my peephole, pressing my eye against the small circle of glass. The hallway was empty. Whoever was in 3A had left, but I hadn't seen them. They had moved too quickly. I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the door, hugging my knees, waiting for any sound. But the apartment remained silent until dawn. The next morning, I went down to the manager's office. Garrick Thorne was behind his desk, drinking coffee from a giant mug, staring at his phone. "Miss Castellano." He looked up, flashing that fake smile. "What can I do for you?" "Apartment 3A, I said without preamble. "Who lives there?" His smile faltered. "Why do you ask?" "Because I've been hearing noises, during the night, like someone's trying to break into something." "Oh." He took a sip of coffee, avoiding my gaze. "Probably just the building settling. You know how renovations are. Everything new makes weird noises. It doesn't sound like the building settling. It sounds like someone turning a doorknob and scratching walls." "I'm sure it's just, who lives in 3A?" I repeated, louder this time. He sighed, setting down his cup. "Look, Miss Castellano, I have privacy policies. I can't just divulge information about other tenants. I have a right to know who lives next to me. And they have a right to their privacy. Can't you even give me a name?" There was a long pause. Then, Quillen Vex. He's been there for 2 months. "And have there been complaints about him?" Another awkward silence. "I can't discuss. Other tenants with..." "That's a yes." My stomach sank. "There have been complaints." "Miss Castellano." "What kind of complaints?" "Nothing you need to worry about. Just minor behavioral adjustments. You know how it is when people live in close proximity." That didn't sound reassuring at all. Back in my apartment, I did what I should have done earlier. I Googled Quillen Vex Denver. The results chilled me. There were articles, police reports, an arrest 3 years ago for breaking and entering. He had broken into someone's apartment, a single woman who lived alone, 3 times over a 2-week period. He was finally caught when she installed a hidden camera. He had been convicted, served 18 months, and was released on probation. And now he lived next door to me. My hands shook as I read the articles. The victim's comments about how it had started. Strange noises at night. The feeling that someone had been in her apartment. Things moved slightly out of place. And then the actual break-ins. He would come in while she was asleep. He would just stand there, watching her. I closed my laptop, feeling sick. I had to move. Immediately. The lease didn't matter. The money didn't matter. I couldn't stay here. But moving took time. I needed to find a new place, get the deposit together, wait for availability dates, and in the meantime, that night I bought a security camera. Cheap from Amazon, but functional. I set it up pointing at my door, with notifications to my phone if it detected movement. I also bought a rubber doorstop to put under the door, and pepper spray, and a baseball bat that I put next to the futon. I felt ridiculous, but also terrified. At 1 in the morning, it started. But this time, it was different. This time, the click wasn't coming from the wall of 3A. It was coming from my own door. I sat up abruptly on the futon, my heart stopping completely. Click, click, click. Someone was turning the doorknob on my door, testing it, seeing if it would open. I grabbed my phone, opening the camera app with trembling fingers. The screen loaded, showing the black and white view of my door from the inside. And I saw the doorknob. It was moving, turning down, releasing, turning again. Exactly like the sounds I had been hearing from 3A. Except now it was my door, my doorknob. Someone was trying to get in. I jumped off the futon, grabbing the baseball bat. "I know you're there," I yelled at the door. "I called the police." I hadn't, but maybe the lie would scare him off. The doorknob stopped moving. I ran to the peephole, pressing my eye against it. There was a man standing in the hallway, tall, thin, with dark tousled hair. He was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, and he was looking directly at my door, as if he knew I was watching. Quillen Vex. It had to be him. Our eyes met through the peephole, or at least it felt that way, and a slow smile spread across his face. Not a friendly smile. Something darker, more predatory. He raised his hand and gave a slow wave, taunting. Then he walked away, down the hallway toward 3A. I heard him open his door, go inside, close it softly. I dialed 911 with hands that could barely hold the phone. 911, what is your emergency? My neighbor, I gasped. He just tried to break into my apartment. He has a history of trespassing. His name is Quillen Vex. Please send someone. Are you in immediate danger? He's gone. He went back to his apartment. But he just tried to break in. He was turning my doorknob. Did he enter the apartment? No, but did he verbally threaten you? No, he was just testing my door. But he has a history. I'll send an officer to take your statement. Can you stay in your apartment with the door locked until they arrive? As if I had a choice. The officers arrived 40 minutes later. By then, every nerve in my body was on high alert. I had dragged my only heavy piece of furniture, a small dresser, in front of the door. I was holding the baseball bat. I had the pepper spray in my pocket. I looked through the peephole before opening the door. 2 uniformed officers showing their badges. I moved the dresser, removed the rubber stopper, and unlocked the bolts. "Miss Castellano," said one of them, a woman with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. "I'm Officer Ramona Vale. Can you tell us what happened?" I told them everything. The noises at night, the scratches, the doorknob being tested, my research on Quillen Vex and his background. Tonight's incident. I also showed them the security camera footage. My doorknob moving. Clearly. Undeniably. Vale frowned. "That's troubling. We're going to talk to him." "Is he on probation?" asked his partner, a young man who looked like he had just graduated from the academy. "Yes, for trespassing." They exchanged glances. "We're definitely going to talk to him and his probation officer." I watched them through my peephole as they knocked on the door of 3A. Once, twice, 3 times, no answer. "Mr. Vex, Denver Police, we need to talk to you." More silence. Vale took out his phone, making a call. They spoke quietly for a few minutes. Then they returned to my door. "He's not responding," Vale said. "But we're going to contact his probation officer. Violating the terms could send him back to prison. In the meantime, do you have somewhere you can stay? Friends, family? Can't you arrest him now? He didn't enter your apartment. Technically, trying a doorknob from the hallway isn't illegal. It's suspicious, especially given his history, but it's not enough for an arrest. However, it's definitely enough for his probation officer to investigate." After they left, I stood there, staring at my door, feeling the inadequacy of every lock, every deadbolt. I didn't stay that night. I packed a bag and went to a hotel, a cheap one near the airport with double deadbolts and a security guard in the lobby. But eventually, I had to go back. I couldn't afford to live in hotels indefinitely. Garrick Thorne called the next day. "Miss Castellano, about your complaint." "Complaint? Complaint. Your tenant has a criminal record and is trying to break into my apartment." "I understand your concern, but Mr. Vex assures me it was a misunderstanding. He says he mistook your door for his. The numbers are similar, 3A and 3B. That's bullshit, and you know it. And his probation officer visited him this morning. Everything is fine. He's in compliance with the terms." "Are you telling me you're not going to do anything?" "There's nothing to be done. If you're uncomfortable, I can offer to break your lease without penalty." "I'd lose my deposit." "Deposits are non-refundable, Miss Castellano. It's in the lease." Of course it was. I spent the next 3 days looking for new apartments, but every place I found had some problem. Too expensive, too far from job opportunities, not available for 2 months. In the meantime, I stayed in my apartment during the day, working on job applications, and went to coffee shops or libraries at night, returning only when I was too exhausted to keep my eyes open. The sounds continued. Every night. 1 in the morning. But now it was only from the wall of 3A again, not my door. As if he knew I was watching him, that there were cameras, that the police knew about him. Click, click, scritch, scritch. The sound became part of my nightly routine. I put on white noise headphones, trying to drown it out. But even through the headphones, I could feel it. That presence on the other side of the wall. A week after the police incident, something changed. I woke up at 3 in the morning, later than usual, to a different sound. My door. Opening. I sat up with a start, fully alert, adrenaline exploding through my system. The door was ajar, just a crack, letting in light from the hallway, but I had closed it. I had locked it. I had put the deadbolt on. The chain. How? Then I saw it. A hand, thin, pale, sliding through the crack. Fingers groping, feeling for the security chain. I screamed. The sound tore from my throat, primitive, terrified. The hand withdrew. The door slammed shut. I jumped off the futon, grabbing my phone, dialing 911 as I ran to the door to secure it properly. But when I got there, I froze. The deadbolt wasn't engaged. The chain hung loose. I had secured them. I know I had. I checked them 3 times every night, an obsessive ritual born of fear. How? Then I saw it, on the floor next to the door. A tool. Thin, metal, like a long hook. A lock-picking tool. He had opened my door. From the outside, he had overcome my locks. 911, what is your emergency? He's trying to get in, I yelled into the phone. He just picked my lock. Send someone now. What is your address? I gave it to them, the words pouring out in a torrent. Officers are on their way. Is the intruder still there? I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No, he's gone, but he was here. His hand was... He was reaching. I collapsed against the door, sobbing, the adrenaline turning to violent shakes. The police arrived in 8 minutes, this time with more officers, and an arrest warrant, violation of probation, attempted burglary, possession of burglary tools. They entered 3A with a master key to the building. Quillen Vex wasn't there, but they found things. Lockpicking tools, photos of my door taken from the hallway, a notebook with notes about my schedule, when I left, when I returned, when I slept. And most disturbing, a copy of my key. He had made a copy of my key. I don't know how. Maybe from the landlord's master copy. Maybe he had stolen it from me temporarily when I left my bag unattended somewhere. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that he could get in whenever he wanted. He was arrested 3 days later at a gas station 2 hours away. He was given a 5-year sentence for violating his probation and the new charges. 5 years. I was 30. He was 33. In 5 years, I would be 35. And he would be out. I moved the day after his arrest. I didn't wait to find the perfect place. I took the first apartment I could afford, in a different building, in a different neighborhood with new locks and a 24-hour doorman. But I still hear that sound. Click, click, click. Every night around 1 a.m., I wake up, my body trained by weeks of terror. And for a second, just a second, I think I hear it. The sound of a doorknob being tested. The sound of someone trying to get in. The sound of knowing that on the other side of a door, a wall, a flimsy lock, there is someone waiting. Always waiting. I check my locks 5 times every night now. 6, 7. It never feels like enough. Because I learned something in that apartment. Something I will never forget. Locks only work if the person on the other side decides to respect them. And some people never do.